Yes, walk right over there and drop it in the bin. Reuse that wastewater from your kitchen for the garden. Get your hands dirty and plant a tree. Farmers, hold off on the pesticides, especially near our rivers. Do your part to protect our watersheds so we can preserve the source of our drinking water. Every act to protect our watersheds counts. Start now.
Almighty God, by whom alone kings reign, and princes decree justice, and from whom alone cometh all counsel, wisdom, and understanding, we, thine unworthy servants, here gathered together in thy name, do most humbly beseech thee to send down thy heavenly wisdom from above, to direct and guide us in all our consultations, and grant that we, having thy fear always before our eyes, and laying aside all private interests, prejudices, and partial affections, the result of all our counsels may be to the glory of thy blessed name, the maintenance of true religion and justice, the safety, honor, and happiness of the king, the public weal, peace and tranquility of the island, and the uniting and knitting together of the hearts of all persons and estates within the same, in true Christian love and charity, one towards another, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen.
House now resumes its sitting. Call of the roll.
Mrs. Holness, Mr. Bartlett, Mr. Holness, Dr. Clark, Dr. Chang, Mr. Shaw, Mr. Samuda, Ms. Grange, Mrs. Williams, Mrs. Malawi Fort, Dr. Tufton, Mr. McKenzie, Mr. Chuck, Mr. Vaz, Mr. Warmington, Mr. Charles, Mr. Green, Mr. Morgan, Mr. Hutchinson, Mr. Terrelong, Ms. Smith, Dr. Dunn, Mrs. Cuthbert Flynn, Mr. Main, Mr. Davis, Mr. Witter, Mr. Brown, Dr. Brown-Burke, Dr. Charles, Mr. Chin, Mr. Clark, Mr. Cousins, Ms. Crawford, Ms. Daly, Ms. Davis, Mr. Golding, Mr. Graham, Dr. Guy, Ms. Hamilton, Ms. Hannah,
Mr. Henriquez, Mr. Henry, Mr. Hilton, Mr. Jackson, Mr. Lawrence, Miss Lee, Miss Miller, Mr. Miller, Mr. Montague, Miss Morrison, Mrs. Nita Garvey, Mr. Paulwell, Mr. Phillips, Dr. Phillips, Mr. Robertson, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Siblist, Mr. Slowly, Mrs. Vaz, Dr. Wheatley, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Williams, Mr. Wright, Miss Smith,
Members, as usual, it is my privilege and pleasure to welcome all of us here this evening for the sitting of the House of Representatives. Today, 16th of May, when we will continue the sectoral debate. I want to extend a very special welcome to persons in the gallery, and I know I can recognize, at least from pictures, the other half of the member, the proud member from Southwest St. Elizabeth, and the minister without portfolio in the office of the Prime Minister, who are one of our speakers this afternoon. I also want to welcome all those joining us online by the various social media platforms, and of course all of us here as members of Parliament. House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today it is our intention to continue the sectoral debate. Our presenters today will be the Honourable Floyd Green, Member of Parliament for St. Elizabeth. Southwestern, and Ms. Lisa Hanna, Member of Parliament for St. Anne Southeastern. In that order, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Members, the question before the House is that we have a suspension of the items on the agenda and move to public business, where we'll have the continuation of the sectoral debate. Those in favor? Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Member, the Honourable Floyd Green, Minister without portfolio in the office of the Prime Minister. Now invite you.
Madam Speaker, permission to speak from a seat. That's not mine.
Permission is granted.
Thank you. Colossians 3 verse 23 says, whatever you do, work with all your heart, as working for the Lord. Madam Speaker, we gather here today acutely aware that the work we do will determine the lives of generations of Jamaicans. Our people are among the most creative, talented, determined, hardworking, and astute people in the world, and are depending on us who occupy these chairs to represent those values and aspirations, and to do our part in ensuring that they can experience a better life. Madam Speaker, I remain humbled that I have been called upon to play a part in this mission, a mission that this government is committed to, not in talk, as is often the case, but in action, in far-reaching, calculated action that will ensure that every single Jamaican, no matter their station in life, will enjoy a better life. So, Madam Speaker, today we'll outline how the Office of the Prime Minister and the various agencies, units, and councils under my charge are working to create a better life for all Jamaicans. But first, Madam Speaker, allow me to share some words of gratitude. In my darkest moments and in my greatest joys, I appreciate that I am nothing without the Lord. I give him thanks for continuing to lead, guide, and strengthen me on this journey. My mother and father, June and Ronald Green, I thank them for the fundamental values that they imparted, and I thank Grandpa Roots up in heaven for always instilling belief in me. To our Prime Minister, the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, this past year has further cemented my belief that he will fundamentally transform Jamaica for the better. Madam Speaker, his every decision is predicated upon the question, what is in the best interest of our people and our country? Mr. Prime Minister, you continue to provide inspired and effective leadership, and I'm appreciative of your guidance and support, and humbled to play my part in advancing your vision. Madam Speaker, your duty is a challenging one, and I revere your strength and your command of the House. You have led every sitting with objectivity and efficacy. Thank you for your usual guidance and your kind words, and please give my kindest regards to the people of South Trelawney. To my fellow members, it is not an easy road, and I respect your commitment and your service. I want to thank the staff of the Office of the Prime Minister and its agencies, led by Permanent Secretary, the Honorable Audrey Sewell, CTD, Sharika Hebbins-Allison, the National Identification Project Team, led by Dr. Vernon, the RGD, and all other councils, departments, and agencies of the OPM who are working to create a better life for all Jamaicans. Madam Speaker, it is often the persons behind the scenes that make what we do possible. And I wouldn't be able to stand here today without the work of my communications specialist, Kenisha Campbell, my executive assistant, Malika Morgan, my secretary, Dorset Bowen Walsh, my close protection officer, Roxroy Montague, and Rasta, my driver. Madam Speaker, this is the 5th time that I have been able to address the House at a sectoral presentation. This is, however, the first time that I am able to welcome my wife. Mrs. Kerida Bryce Green. The support and understanding that she and my son Nathaniel Marcus give is immeasurable. I love you both immensely, and I thank you for all you do. My Southwest St. Elizabeth family, the love, appreciation I have for you is unmatched. Thank you for your continued confidence in me to serve. Allow me to specially recognize Councillor Jeremy Palmer, Mayor Derek Sangster, Councillor Whitney Smith-Curry, Caretaker Dini Bamadelli, Dr. Carl White, and my entire management team. Madam Speaker, I will start my sojourn on the steps being taken to create a better life for all with an entity that we all know very well, the Jamaica Social Investment Fund, a results-oriented entity. In order to create a better life for all, Madam Speaker, one has to appreciate some of the critical issues faced across the country and take direct steps to address them. This has been the hallmark of JCIF. Chief among its achievements for last year, Madam Speaker, was the completion of a 1.2 billion coastal revetment along Port Royal Street, a spend members that will benefit over 600,000 Jamaicans. This benefit will come through the reduction of the physical vulnerability of downtown Kingston, and also the fishermen in the area, Madam Speaker, have been given a new beach area with amenities for them to conduct their trade. Madam Speaker, you must be honest. Now, when you drive on that stretch, you feel and see the revitalization of downtown Kingston and the creation of a new Jamaica. We are creating a better life for all. JCIF infrastructure support is, however, not limited to urban spaces. or to reducing climate vulnerabilities, with the government, through the Minister of Local Government, identifying the need and risk that our country faces from a poorly supported Jamaica Fire Service. JSIF has provided finance for fundamental change. Madam Speaker, for years, the people of Yalas and Port Maria were promised that something would be done about the lack of support for the fire service. Under this Andrew Holness-led administration, through JSIF, Jamaica's ability to mitigate against and manage emergencies in Yalas and in Port Maria has been strengthened with the construction of 2 fire stations, benefiting over 200,000 persons, costing $371 million. Madam Speaker, for all of us who sit in this house, we appreciate that the lack of facilities to treat with our children with special needs is a severe situation. This has been the case for decades, but is not a reality that we can allow to persist. The Ministry of Education, Madam Speaker, is now working to create a better life for our children with special needs, and JSIF is making it possible. Madam Speaker, hundreds of students across Manchester Central and adjoining areas who require special education now have a more affordable option following the construction of a fully equipped special education block at the Albion Primary School valued at over $87 million. We are creating a better life for all. JSIF has also moved to support the government's strategic plan to expand secondary healthcare centers in order to take the pressure off the primary facilities like hospitals. And as such, Madam Speaker, over the last 2 years, JSIF has constructed or rehabilitated health centers in Adelphi and Granville St. James to benefit 13,000 persons. The health center constructed in Adelphi was constructed, Madam Speaker, at a cost of $50 million. And this expanded service health center is a welcome addition for the members of the community who no longer have to travel to other centers to access vital services. The Granville Health Center was rehabilitated and expanded at a cost of over $52 million. Madam Speaker, larger waiting areas, additional office, other healthcare personnel, a healthy and safer environment to work in. We are creating a better Jamaica for all. Madam Speaker, Mr. Sweeney is here, and we know that he has a special place in his heart for the farmers of this country. And as such, JSIF has worked with the Ministry of Agriculture to strengthen the sector through the Rural Economic Development Initiative READY program. In fact, 1,900 farmers in New Forest and Dove House agri-parks now benefit from water that is extracted through the NIC system with the installation of new solar plant to run that facility wholly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there has been a multi-purpose cold storage facility in my the members' constituency in Anoto Bay, St. Mary, which was retrofitted to help 127 farmers from St. Mary, St. Thomas, Portland, and other parishes. Madam Speaker, over 3,000 women and youth farmers, fisherfolk, backyard farmers got equipment, tools, inputs for crop production, apiculture, fisheries, livestock from JSIF in the last financial year. JSIF continues to make the lives of people better. But Madam Speaker, the member who speaks next can testify to the work of JSIF. What never happened in 22 years is happening now under this government. Madam Speaker, it was on full display with the recent handover of 3.1 kilometers of road in Epworth, Southeast St. Anne, costing over $106 million. Madam Speaker, since the road has been done, crop production in the area has increased by 25%. And you know, Madam Speaker, you know what is being reported? The teachers from Epworth Primary, they're saying that attendance to school has now increased since the road has been done. We are creating a better life for all. Madam Speaker, in volatile communities, the safe route to school initiatives have been implemented, namely in Augustown, Roehampton, in Greenwich Town, in St. James as well. Sidewalk guardrails are constructed, training is provided on safe road practices to reduce negative incidents involving our children walking to and from school. There are 7,000 direct school beneficiaries of that program. In the zones of special operation and in the communities under SOE, JSIF has been strengthening the capacity and working with community groups for them to be leaders in their communities. In fact, they have touched over 64,000 persons across these communities. JSIF also has the Integrated Infrastructure Project, a combination of road rehabilitation, water and sewage infrastructure repair, and the upgrade and installation of laterals so people can have legal connections. One of the areas that they're now working on, Madam Speaker, is Goldsmith Villa and African Gardens in St. Andrew, benefiting over 10,000 people. Madam Speaker, we will continue this work in the new financial year. We will continue our initiatives at climate change on a disaster vulnerability reduction program, where we're continuing the drainage works on the Myton Gully crossing in St. Catherine, which is being undertaken at a cost of $245 million. This intervention, Madam Speaker, will reduce the risk of flooding for over 37,000 residents and the numerous persons who use this area as an access route to Kingston. Madam Speaker, for this financial year, JSIF will be constructing and equipping a biosecure, climate-resilient tilapia fish hatchery at the Aquaculture Branch in Tottenham Park, and will be training 28 National Fisheries Authority staff. Madam Speaker, for this financial year, JSIF will be investing in the agro-parks at Plant and Garden River and Ebony Park to boost the irrigation systems, to benefit over 110 farmers and bring 150 acres of arable land into production. Madam Speaker, to put rural MPs on call, JSIF is preparing a proposal that will assist persons in rural communities who have been negatively affected by climate change. The fund is now an accredited agency by the Green Climate Fund, and I want to congratulate Minister Matthew Samuda on the work in that regard, and the fund can now access up to US $50 million for climate financing grants. Finally, for JSIF, Madam Speaker, the Ready to call for business proposals is open now. Community groups can get up to US $250,000. I urge MPs to work with their community groups, have them check the JSIF website, jsif.org, and have them apply. Madam Speaker, we are creating a better life for all. Madam Speaker, in the same vein, the Chase Fund has been doing significant work to create a better life for all. The Chase Fund continues to channel needed interventions for social transformation and sustain national economic growth in its mandated areas: early childhood education, health, arts, and culture. Madam Speaker, last year under its early childhood education portfolio, Chase completed the construction of 3 infant schools at the Santa Cruz Primary, the Leeds Primary, and the Savlamar Primary in Westmoreland. Madam Speaker, these interventions represent over 11,000 square feet of early childhood education space and benefit over 440 infants. But Chase has not stopped there. They have upgraded over 30 infant schools through roof repairs, bathroom renovations, doors and windows installation. In fact, they've equipped student and teacher furniture, kitchen equipment. But the one that excites me, Madam Speaker, is that Chase has a technology enhancement program that they do not only help early childhood institutions with computers and printers, but Madam Speaker, if you look to the screen, Chase is now putting in our early childhood schools interactive display boards. So we're out with the whiteboards and we're bringing technology into the classroom of our early childhood centers. Madam Speaker, we also provided 276 scholarships valued at $60 million to students pursuing undergraduate and postgraduate studies in the education center. I think it is fair to say, Madam Speaker, that Chase is creating a better life for our children. Madam Speaker, when you look at health, I won't speak about Chapelton, because the member from North Central Clarendon has already said a lot about how the health system of Chapelton has been made better. Suffice to say, Madam Speaker, Chase contributed $132 million to the rehabilitation of the Chapelton Community Hospital. It is a brand new hospital. You can see it on the screen, Madam Speaker. But Madam Speaker, Chase has done a lot more for health. And I'm going to go through, because a lot of these things happen and they go unnoticed. Madam Speaker, through the funding of Chase, the Savlamar Public General Hospital was provided with ECG machines, portable ultrasound machines, cardiac monitors, and patient vital monitors to improve triage and the assessment of patients. The Mandeville Regional Hospital was equipped with a C-arm machine, which is an advanced medical imaging device. The Bustamante Hospital for Children was equipped with microbiological incubator for the testing of biological samples. Additionally, digital radiographic equipment was put in 6 hospitals and health centers in the southern region, while Salt Spring Health Center saw upgrades. Madam Speaker, all of these interventions will help over 237,000 Jamaicans. But, Madam Speaker, Chase did not stop there. In fact, the Kingston Public Hospital and the Spanish Town Hospital each received 10 new dialysis machines funded by Chase. Madam Speaker, we know the need. These machines will greatly improve patient care and reduce downtime often experienced from the older malfunctioning units. Additionally, Madam Speaker, 6 well-needed ambulances were funded by Chase, 4 to the Western Regional Health Authority and 2 to the Southeast Regional Health Authority. Madam Speaker, we are creating a better life for all. Madam Speaker, last year the Prime Minister gave the directive that $150 million should be provided to our entertainment industry. to help revitalize the industry. $150 million. Madam Speaker, funding was approved for 48 projects, totaling the entire $150 million during the last financial year. Madam Speaker, a vast array of things were done, including supporting entertainment events, supporting cultural organization, minor repairs to facilities that host artistic and cultural activities, things like the Civil Emancipation Jubilee, Jamaica 60 Sound Fest in St. Anne, and the 14th annual Charlestown Maroon Conference all got support from the $150 million. Plus, Madam Speaker, Chase awarded 83 arts and culture scholarships and education grants to students in need. We are making the lives of Jamaica better. Madam Speaker, what are the priorities for this year from Chase? And I'll only speak of 3. Under early childhood education, the organization will continue to help infant departments reach the standards for ECC certification, and they will be constructing schools in the Barking Lodge area in St. Thomas and Farm Primary and Infant School in St. James. I hear the member from St. Thomas. In relation to health, Madam Speaker, a very exciting initiative that Chase wants to embark on starting this year, appreciating the challenges that we have with people who have kidney problems, Madam Speaker. Chase is looking to construct a regional nephrology center of excellence in St. Anne. They will start the design work this year at the St. Anne's Bay Hospital. They will start the design work this year, Madam Speaker, and that would go a very, very far way to helping our Jamaicans who have kidney challenges. Madam Speaker, one of the main priorities, and the member from St. Thomas will clap again, one of the main priorities on the arts and culture this year, as directed by the Prime Minister, Chase will be establishing a museum in Morant Bay, St. Thomas, to commemorate the country's rich cultural history and the history of the area. Madam Speaker, we can all agree that the Chase Fund is helping to make the life better for all Jamaicans. Madam Speaker, making life better also means making government processes and systems easier. This has been the direction since I have had oversight of the RGD, and it aligns with the RGD's digital bold strategy. The ultimate objective is to increase accessibility, convenience, and efficiency in our products and service. Last year, Madam Speaker, I announced that the RGD has earmarked on a digital transformation journey to position itself to transition into the National Identification Registration Authority, which is expected to be the leader in the delivery of digital government services. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to announce that we achieved big things last year. Last year, Madam Speaker, I announced that we would be able to get an online electronic burial order. That was done. Last year, Madam Speaker, I announced that Jamaicans would be able to go online and apply for adoption certificates. That was done. Last year, Madam Speaker, I announced that you will be able to sit in the comfort of your home and book your wedding at the RGD online. That has been done. Madam Speaker, not only did we do what we said we were going to do, but Madam Speaker, the team did more. Since December last year, you can go online and pay and search for authenticated copies of wills and deeds. Madam Speaker, it's something that the diaspora has been asking for, and now you can go on and search. The other thing that we did in December, Madam Speaker, you can track your applications online. you no longer need to pick up the phone and call the RGD to ask them where in the process is your application. You can go online and see the status. And Madam Speaker, to be honest, my wife and I, we put the system to the test. So Madam Speaker, having got married, we sat at home and we applied for our marriage certificate. Madam Speaker, it took us 3 minutes to do the application online. 3 minutes to upload the documents, apply, and submit the application. Madam Speaker, we tracked the application in real time, and we could see when it was received, when it moved into one section, when it moved to another section. Madam Speaker, in 5 days, the application was ready for pickup. Madam Speaker, we are making life easier for all Jamaicans. No, I don't keep it. The wife keeps it. I'm sorry. But Madam Speaker, not only have we introduced these services, because people might say, you've introduced these services, but are people using them? Madam Speaker, between April 1, 2022 and March 31st, 2023, 43,000 Jamaicans paid and utilized online services of the RGD to make their application for various things. In fact, we just introduced the online tracking, Madam Speaker, and 17,000 Jamaicans have already utilized the online tracking service to track their application. Madam Speaker, there is more. I have challenged the management team to install systems to cut the wait time and make the experience better when you visit the RGD offices. Madam Speaker, last year, we put in an additional 5 locations, Mandeville, Maypen, Santa Cruz, and St. Anne's Bay, and also Portmore, we put in automated customer queuing systems. Madam Speaker, this has reduced wait time by an average of 21% across all our branches. But Madam Speaker, we've gone even further, because as we move in the modern age, every single RGD office now, Madam Speaker, that you go into, they have Wi-Fi in the customer service area. So Madam Speaker, not only is the wait more bearable, but you can also, if you do not have the service at home, you can also get the online services by coming to the office. And we're going a bit further, Madam Speaker. One of our innovations is to introduce self-service kiosks at all our branches. This will provide a convenient, efficient way for customers to complete various tasks, such as making the applications, tracking the processes, or completing other types of transactions. Madam Speaker, by allowing the customers to complete the transactions on their own, it reduces the dependency on the customer service representative, and therefore allowing them to deal with the more difficult matters. We've already installed the first at our head office. And Madam Speaker, what I'm pleased to announce that we're going to do this year is not just install the kiosks at RGD offices, but Madam Speaker, we're going to go to high traffic government offices like the tax office, so that if you go to the tax office, you can also do the RGD's business instead of having to travel to multiple places to get that done. We are making life easier for all Jamaicans. Madam Speaker, we've seen that genealogy research has grown significantly all around the world. People want to know their family tree, their family structure. They want to trace their ancestry. And as such, Madam Speaker, we decided during the course of this year to revamp our genealogy service, to make it more effective and more efficient, And we have rebranded it, Madam Speaker, and now it is known as the Out of Many search. You like that one? Out of Many search. So, Madam Speaker, since the rebranding, we have already received 609 applications for the Out of Many search. And I invite all parliamentarians to utilize the search. Trace, I think the member from St. Mary has his own. Excellent. Madam Speaker, let me speak about what is next for the RGD. Madam Speaker, I spoke about my own experience in getting the marriage certificate. But there was one challenge. And I'll tell you, one of the challenges that we had, Madam Speaker, is in the actual collection of the certificate. Because the collection of the certificate required that we travel to the RGD office to get the certificate. And that took a little too long. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to announce that in the second quarter of this year, you will be able to get your RGD products delivered to your doorstep. We are reintroducing the certificate delivery service, Madam Speaker, so people do not need to come to the office. They can apply online and they can pay for delivery and get the delivery directly to them. Additionally, this year, Madam Speaker, we do offer free first birth certificates. But the RGD had put in a process, Madam Speaker, that you had to apply for the birth certificate because we didn't want to have the certificates and people not come to collect it. So what used to happen is that people had to go to the RGD office to apply for that free birth certificate. Madam Speaker, as of this year, people will be able to apply online for their free birth certificate. So 30,000 mothers will no longer need to make a visit to the RGD to make that application in person. Madam Speaker, one more innovation for this year, and I think Minister Chuck will like this one. Madam Speaker, if you listen to Minister Chuck's presentation, he spoke about the challenges with deadlift and the issues at the Administrator General and the fact that a lot of Jamaicans are still passing away without leaving a will. Madam Speaker, this year, the RGD plans to introduce a will drafting and recording service that will help Jamaicans draft their will and register their will at the RGD. We are making life better for all, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have two more. Madam Speaker, in this regard. We are going to install, Madam Speaker, we are working with our parish councils. We do realize, Madam Speaker, that there are a number of Jamaicans who die overseas, Madam Speaker. They come to Jamaica to be buried, but the RGD has no record of that burial. We're going to be working with the parish councils, and the parish councils have the burial record. We're going to be working with the parish councils so that we can close that loop this year. Additionally, we're going to be purchasing a new call management system, Madam Speaker, because I have heard the complaints about people trying to call the RGD and still having challenges. But, Madam Speaker, this is the innovation that I'm most excited about. Madam Speaker, over the years, I have continued to advocate for the inclusion of our most vulnerable in all that we do. In order to satisfy, Madam Speaker, our visually impaired customers, this year, the RGD will be embarking on printing birth certificates in Braille, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this will be executed through a partnership with the Jamaica Council for Persons with Disabilities, the Jamaica Society for the Blind, and the other relevant stakeholders. Madam Speaker, this will be a pioneering effort in the English-speaking Caribbean, but it will ensure that those of our visual impaired and those who are blind feel included in what we do here in Jamaica.
Transformational.
Madam Speaker, last year, the government committed to introducing an undocumented registration program for Jamaicans earning minimum wage or less. Today, Madam Speaker, we have received over 2,000 applications for birth certificates under the government Operation Birthright program. Madam Speaker, we've also partnered with the Direct Department of Correctional Services. And we have already, and I want to commend Minister Chang and Minister Main especially, we've already, Madam Speaker, provided close to 100 birth certificates for inmates who never ever had a birth certificate. Madam Speaker, what we have found in the Operation Birthright program, only about 10% of those who apply had some form of preliminary documentation. The other 90% were basically starting from scratch. And what that means, Madam Speaker, we have to, in a number of cases, obtain their school records, obtain records from churches, from communities, in order to get them a birth certificate. Of the ones that are easy, Madam Speaker, we've already printed 96%. So already 274 persons who did not have a birth certificate now have a birth certificate, Madam Speaker. And we are moving to do the work to treat with the rest. In fact, Madam Speaker, what we have done is that we have employed about 14 new persons that are focus member on Operation Birthright. So what you will see over the next 2 months is an acceleration of the pace between application and providing the birth certificate. We are also will be embarking on a promotional campaign, Madam Speaker, because we know there are still more persons out there and we want them to apply. And as such, I'm imploring all Jamaicans to use the program to gain the benefits. Last year, Madam Speaker, I also announced that we were moving on a digitization project. I'm pleased to update the House, Madam Speaker, that Fujitsu Caribbean Jamaica Limited has completed the construction and the setup at the RGD, a records digitization and indexing facility. And they have already conducted the pilot that has digitized over 2,300 civil records. Madam Speaker, to remind the House, this project, which falls under the NIDS program, this project will digitize all the records at the RGD from 1930 to present, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, you know, an additional benefit, we have already employed 29 HOPE students. And we're seeking to employ another 11 HOPE graduates, Madam Speaker. And when we're finished, these graduates will be certified in digitization. And we expect them now to move across government to help in the digitization process. Madam Speaker, we're also in the process of procuring a national civil registry solution. This solution will be able to link all our records, from birth, marriage, deed poll, death records. Madam Speaker, I don't know if you know, members, I'm not sure if you are aware, but we have a process in Jamaica that is called a life certificate, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, people who are on the NIS pension, every 4 months, they have to find a JP that has to verify that they are still alive. Now, the most vulnerable among us, they have to go to get a JP to say that they're alive. And why that happens, Madam Speaker, is because there is no link between our records. So if somebody passes away, there is no automatic process for you to know. This government will get rid of the life certificate regime. So, Madam Speaker, we are procuring a new civil registry solution to link all our records, and we're going to be introducing our national identification system. Madam Speaker, last year we spoke about thinking digital. But oftentimes we forget that the reason why we're embarking on a digital journey is to make life easier for our citizens. It is truly to create a better life for all, Madam Speaker. So this year, we are focused on implementing national identification as a service for public good. Madam Speaker, on December 13th, the government opened the National Identification Card Personalization Center, an enrollment site at the Central Sorting Office, and commenced a technical pilot to evaluate all the processes behind the enrollment and issuance of a national identification card. Madam Speaker, during the technical pilot, the NIDS Project Executing Unit and the PBS Consortium successfully integrated various systems such as pre-enrollment, inline enrollment, queue management, and identity management. The system, Madam Speaker, is now able to personalize national identification cards with digital certificates as one of the final layers of protection for card holders. Additionally, Madam Speaker, we spent the last few months doing penetration tests to ensure that we have the most secure system possible when we undertake our national rollout. Madam Speaker, digital signatures are now a reality. And what we're able to do is to personalize each national identification card with unique credentials that can be used for authentication from age 13. Madam Speaker, we believe that this new tool will really create a sustainable future for all Jamaicans. So, Madam Speaker, we are now on to the next step. And the next step, Madam Speaker, that we have embarked on is that we have opened up the system to Jamaicans. We have invited 300 Jamaicans to volunteer to register for the participation in our pilot project. In fact, Madam Speaker, we said you could register online. We were looking for 300 people, and within 24 hours, we had to close it down because the response was so great from people wanting to participate in the national identification system. And Madam Speaker, these are real persons, real Jamaicans who have now started
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the Minister's time for speaking be extended by 15 minutes to allow him to complete his presentation. Thank you.
Members, the question is that the Minister be given 15 minutes to complete his presentation. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Minister?
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I was making the point that Jamaicans have gone and are now going through the pilot process. And Madam Speaker, here are some of the responses from regular Jamaicans. Sean on Twitter said, I did my NIDS enrollment this morning. Very good experience and professional staff. They are currently accepting walk-ins. Okino said, I did my enrollment today. It was an exceptional experience as far as customer service is concerned. I also felt that my data was being handled with care and that the employees understood the importance of data protection. Somebody who goes by the name Jamaican Girl So I went and got enrolled in the NIDS pilot today, and I quite enjoyed it. Maybe a little bit too much, because me and the lady ended up chatting. But it was a breeze. Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Jamaicans are now experiencing the better Jamaica through our national identification system. So, Madam Speaker, this year we will move into national rollout. It is clear that in order for the national ID to work, it has to be accessible and it has to be useful. So in this calendar year, the government will go to tender to select contractors to commence a modification of an additional 19 post offices to expand access to the national identification card. We're presently, Madam Speaker, finishing the enrollment center at the Post Office Mall in Ligani and will break ground for Mona and Constant Spring. Madam Speaker, we will be utilizing the post office space to create modern, state-of-the-art enrollment facilities. I wanted to show you a little bit of what it will look like. So let us see if we can get the video going. So, Madam Speaker, again, what we will be doing is revamping the post office space. I think this one is Black River. This is, of course, Frankie and JC, what Black River will look like, their NIDS enrollment center. And again, as you can see, we are ensuring that we can have all Jamaicans, so it will be equipped for persons with disabilities. This is a good point to note, Madam Speaker, that the national identification card, if persons with disabilities so elect, they will have the international disability sign on their card, so they can use that to show that they have a disability. Can we see what Mona will look like? Madam Speaker, what we're going to do at Mona is we're going to create an almost brand new facility at Mona, because we believe that we will be able to utilize the campus that is right next door, that there will be a lot of interest from the students on campus to get their national ID. They won't have to go home, Madam Speaker, to get their ID. They can just go down to the post office gate, where you will have a brand new facility to have their national ID. I think the NIDS team deserves a big round of applause. But, Madam Speaker, not only does NIDS have to be accessible, the national ID has to be useful. And as such, Madam Speaker, we have gotten a consultant and we've identified at least 100 government services that heavily use identification, that we're going to seek to digitize using the national identification system to make life easier for Jamaicans. So services like PATH, NIS, so instead of having to have a separate NIS number, why can't you just apply for your NIS using your national identification card and get the NIS without having to go to a separate government entity? That is what we're working on, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, we're not stopping with government. We're not stopping with government. We signed the MOU, Madam Speaker. You would like this, Fitz. We signed the MOU with our banks. We signed a MOU with 10 deposit-taking institutions so that we could see how we could work together to use the national identification system to make the opening of bank accounts easier for the regular Jamaican. We have had 4 workshops with our banks, Madam Speaker, trying to see how we can use the national ID to make life better for all. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to announce today that the Bank of Jamaica has given NCB approval to pursue 3 use cases that integrate the services of the National Identification Registration Authority. The 3 use cases being pursued by NCB are face-to-face deposit account onboarding, online deposit onboarding with biometric, authentication, and KYC remediation. Madam Speaker, this is a massive game changer. What it means, Madam Speaker, is that when we get the national identification system up and running, the National Commercial Bank has the authority to open online accounts using the NIDS. Open accounts without people having to go into the bank to get that done. Madam Speaker, this is the Prime Minister's vision. This is the Prime Minister's vision, Madam Speaker, so that those who are outside and who have been trying to come inside and are unable to, we use the technology to let them in. We are making life better for all Jamaicans. Madam Speaker, this year we will operationalize the National Identification and Registration Authority. We're in the final stages of composing the first ever NERA board, with most of the recommendations already being made, and the Prime Minister will make an announcement in short order in relation to the board of NERA. Madam Speaker, I heard Minister Morgan say that, I'll repeat it for my friend, Member Jackson. What was in the pipeline for 40 years is now being done by this government. We are creating a better life for all. Madam Speaker, we are already operationalizing the National Identification Registration Inspectorate, which will be done through the Electoral Commission of Jamaica. It is important to note, Madam Speaker, that NERA will provide independent oversight in terms of protecting the privacy and confidentiality of an individual's identity. Madam Speaker, the House will remember that we tabled the regulations in January of this year, and we took a major step towards inclusivity by laying the regulations and asking for feedback. Madam Speaker, the process went well, and I thank every person and entity that participated and gave us feedback. The CPC is now putting their final touches on the regulations, and I expect that before the end of this month, the regulations will be tabled. Over the next 6 months, Madam Speaker, we will be ramping up our public education about the usefulness of the national ID and the plans for national rollout. Already, Madam Speaker, we have started on-the-ground engagements, and we will be utilizing traditional and social media engagements to spread the word. I'm saying to MPs, we are willing to come to have town halls, school visits, to remind people how the national ID will make your life better. One of the areas, Madam Speaker, that we've already started to let people know, and if the video is ready, we can play the video. This is one of the areas that it will make our life easier. Will you still need a justice of the peace to verify your identity? No. When you have your national identification card, that card is sufficient proof of your identity by law. And you cannot be asked to use any other documentation to prove your identity. Just your national identification card. Safe, simple, and secure. So Madam Speaker, the days of going to a JP, for the JP to sign on the back of your photograph and seal it, those days are numbered, because the national ID will make it easier and better for all Jamaicans. Madam Speaker, I turn to my final 2 areas. In order to create a better life for all, the government appreciates that we have to take an all-hands-on-deck approach. It's for that reason that we continue to prioritize the National Partnership Council. The National Partnership Council comprises of representatives from the government, the parliamentary opposition, private sector, trade unions, church, youth, women, environmentalists, academia, and other members of civil society. It is grounded in the recognition that no one sector has all the answers for all the challenges that confront our nation. As such, Madam Speaker, last year was a very good year for the National Partnership Council. We introduced a new structure with quarterly council meetings with the Prime Minister, monthly meetings of an expanded coordinating committee, and I really want to thank Susan, who serves as our secretariat, and I want to thank Tony Hilton, who serves as the opposition member on the National Partnership Council. And Madam Speaker, we deal with critical issues. You know, we had a long discussion with the Minister. We had a long discussion with the Minister of Education about education transformation. We dealt with matters such as the rear Corby pollution. We looked at development and building code issues. And we looked at the national identification system. But Madam Speaker, it's not just for talk. Because actual decisions, recommendations come out of these meetings. In fact, I know Minister Matthew Samuda sat with us about Rio Corby, and the team advocated for payment for fisher folks. The team advocated for utilization of the bond. And Madam Speaker, all of those things that were advocated for came to pass. And I'll give you another example, Madam Speaker. Quite recently, the Prime Minister sat and listened to the KCAC, NEPA, NWA, present around building orders and codes and development orders for Kingston and St. Andrew. And coming out of that meeting, Madam Speaker, the Prime Minister directed that the KCAC needs to make it easier for citizens to be able to see when somebody has applied for building approval in their neck of the woods and to make a complaint if they have a complaint. I can report, Madam Speaker, that since that time, citizens can now go to the Kingston and St. Andrew Corporation website, and they have a tab for development approval that people can go and type in where they live and see what is happening in terms of approvals, denials, things that are in process. So these conversations, Madam Speaker, lead to actual action. Madam, we have to come there. I agree. Madam Speaker, quickly we signed the new partnership agreement that was signed last year. It's the partnership, the new social partnership for Jamaica's strong and sustainable recovery. Also, Madam Speaker, we have set up a new web page for the Partnership Council, and you can access that via opm.gov.gov. And last year, the Governor General, through the support and advocacy of ACORN, proclaimed October 25 to be National Partnership Day. So, Madam Speaker, the government has seriously worked to strengthen partnership. My final area, Madam Speaker, is around road safety. Madam Speaker, as our government crafts a better life for all Jamaicans, it is important that we focus our energy on ensuring that our people are around to live that better life. Members of this House, still too many people are dying on our roads. And all of us have to coalesce around the action needed to reduce these numbers. The National Road Safety Council has continued its efforts and dedication to making a difference on the nation's roads and to saving the lives of Jamaicans. Thankfully, Madam Speaker, since the start of the year, we have seen a reduction in the amount of road fatalities and also a reduction in the amount of fatal collisions. Madam Speaker, up to yesterday, May 15th, we recorded 142 collisions and 155 deaths on our roads. This compares to 152 collisions last year and 171 deaths at this time last year, representing a 10% decline in collisions and a 17% decline in deaths. This is positive news. However, our numbers of road fatalities are still far too high. Madam Speaker, we have lost 45 motorcyclists. We have lost 40 pedestrians. The deaths represent over 100 Jamaican families that have suffered immeasurable pain and grief, and in most cases have lost their breadwinners. Additionally, Madam Speaker, it was estimated that 5 years ago, the cost of road traffic crashes to the government health sector was $3.2 billion. And this estimate did not take into account private healthcare costs or the costs associated with the loss of productivity due to death or long-term care of injured persons. Madam Speaker, $3.2 billion. Madam Speaker, we cannot relent. And members, we must change the attitudes and culture of reckless driving on our roads. So, Madam Speaker, as we mark UN Global Road Safety Week, Jamaica continues to champion and implement the Safe Systems approach to road safety, which was announced by our Prime Minister in September 2021. And I'll tell you quickly, Madam Speaker, the three things that we're focused on this year. Madam Speaker, we are still focusing on the implementation of the Road Traffic Act. The Road Traffic Act, Madam Speaker, is not a tool of oppression. The Road Traffic Act is designed to promote safe driving practices. And Madam Speaker, if adhered to, the Road Traffic Act would significantly reduce our road fatality numbers. Nonetheless, Madam Speaker, the Council is undertaking a review as directed by the Prime Minister of provisions of the Road Traffic Act. And we have been taking comments from the public. We've already had our first meeting, Madam Speaker, and we're going to have our second meeting before the end of May. At that time, we will start preparing recommendations for Cabinet. Madam Speaker, just to let the House know, we have gotten a wide array of comments, including people complaining about the section that deals with renewal of licenses of drivers aged 70 and over. People are advocating that we should allow the use of the digital copy of their driver's license, if they have that. People have asked, Member Wilson, people have asked whether the RTA should look at by taxes and how you treat with that matter. People have also advocated for the need to remove the need for the front plate on the motorcycle, and people have spoken about specifications regarding tints. So we have gotten a wide array of comments, and we will take them, we will review them, and we will make our recommendation. Madam Speaker, this year we will enhance our motorcycle training program. Very good program. Last year we trained 517 motorcyclists. We have 150 bikers who are now on a path to get their driver's license. We help them with insurance, bike registration. More importantly, the police indicated that they saw an increase in helmet wearing from the riders that we train. We're also going to work on the policy. The last area, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to announce that we will be undertaking a project this year called a Safe Systems Approach for Safer Roads in Jamaica. Madam Speaker, we have secured 400,000 United States dollars from the UN Road Safety Fund to address important facets of the Jamaica road safety environment. And these are the core priorities, Madam Speaker. We will be strengthening road safety management capacities by developing a comprehensive electronic injury surveillance data system. One of the things that we will be doing, Madam Speaker, we will be carrying out a study to observe the attitudes of Jamaicans on the road. We will be also, Madam Speaker, purchasing new breathalyzer equipment. We have 73,000 US for that. We will be purchasing new speed enforcement equipment, 50,000 US for that. And we will be training our officers for the sum of 80,000 US. This project, Madam Speaker, will run over 3 years, and I especially want to commend Dr. Lucien Jones and Mr. Victor Anderson for working to pull this proposal together in record time, and commend the UN Road Safety Fund for supporting this cause. Madam Speaker, members, Jamaica, There is still a far way to go, but Jamaica is in good hands. With the leadership of the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, innovation, transformation, and growth have been our hallmark. Jamaica is being molded into the best version of herself. Madam Speaker, our vision is to ensure, and it must be the vision of us all. Our vision is to ensure that there is a better life for every single Jamaican. Our vision is to address some of our fundamental issues, from disaster risk management to early childhood education to healthcare to reforming our processes to serve us better. Madam Speaker, we will not relent. Neither will we be distracted. This government will, through concerted action, make life easier and better for our citizens. Madam Speaker, we will use our new electronic national ID to unlock the true potential of our people. We will not be left behind. Instead, we will be the creators and not just the users of technology. We will be the trailblazers in climate-smart actions. We will be the trendsetters in road safety and correct road usage. We will craft a better life for all, so that Jamaica may, under God, increase in beauty, fellowship, and prosperity, and play her part in advancing the welfare of the whole human race. God bless you, and God bless Jamaica land. We love you.
Madam Speaker, an excellent presentation. Madam Speaker, I now ask you to invite Ms. Lisa Hanna, Member of Parliament for St. Anne Southeast, to make her contribution. Thank you.
Just before I invite the member from St. Anne Southeastern, I want to thank and agree with the House Leader, the member, Minister Green, for your very spirited presentation, and I thank you for sending greetings to the people of South. And I know they're asking you to ask agencies like JSIF to remember the farmers in South Trelawney. We are crying out. Thank you. Member from Southeast St. Anne, I'm happy for you, but I'm a little jealous. I now invite you to...
Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I ask permission to speak from a seat other than my own. If the member from Clarendon would stop disturbing you, Madam Speaker, I would ask that you grant me permission to speak from a seat other than my own. Thank you. Madam Speaker, I have a confession. And my confession is that when the Leader of Opposition Business gave me the sectoral debate dates, I actually shrugged him off and gave them back to him because I wasn't interested this time around. I wasn't. I felt that every year we come here and somehow we do the things the same way over and over without making any kind of great impact. And the reason why I felt that way is because I thought for the many years that I've been in here that the process is backward. Because really what should happen is that these sectoral debates take place first and that then the suggestions from both sides, the best interests of both sides in a very bipartisan modern vision, should then influence and craft the budget going forward with suggestions for moving the country forward. And so I was indifferent to getting up one more year to come back here to give another sectoral presentation. But Madam Speaker, despite my frustration, despite my indifference, I felt that it is in times like these that one has to muster your courage and get back up one more time despite your personal feelings and emotions. Why? Because I think that courage has a responsibility. It might be perceived as unreasonable, and you might have to stand alone on your principles, but it has a responsibility for the generations coming behind us to pave new roads, so that when we are gone, the generations, like some of the first-term MPs and Jamaicans, will actually say, you know what, they were ahead of their time. Hear, hear. So once again, I boldly get up in this house for another moment, perhaps my last moment in terms of a presentation, because I feel that improving the lives of Jamaicans and contributing to Jamaica is more important than my indignation to resignation of saying nothing. Hear, hear. All right. Hear, hear. Madam Speaker, especially now. Madam Speaker, the truth is the world's geopolitical tectonic plates have shifted. And they've shifted in a way that is acting at a pace that is simultaneous and that is moving in ways that perplex most of us. Historically, when the world's geopolitical plates had shifted, there were for exacting precise moments. I think some in here would remember the assassination of JFK. Some would remember the assassination of MLK. But those of us, we remember the freedom of Nelson Mandela, and certainly other instances in terms of the fall of the Berlin Wall. And in those moments, it gave us cause to pause and identify and self-reflect in terms of how we would move forward in terms of human connectivity. I think the most recent time that we've had our world stop as we know it was with the COVID pandemic. And even though COVID actually caused the world to stop on its axis, the truth is that things have gone right back to the same way. Somehow it has not reshaped how we deal with one another. And as a matter of fact, that is not only globally in terms of the gaps in human behavior, but it's also happening right here in Jamaica. It's almost an alternate universe that people want to operate within. And we see it not only in our constituencies with people being frustrated. People are frustrated with how long it takes their elected leaders to give them proper road and water. But we're also frustrated in here because we realize how long it takes us to actually get representation to give our people the road and water. So, Madam Speaker, there are so many displacing events now that are perplexing the world, from LGBTQ+, to the war in Europe between Russia and Ukraine, to global banks that we have perceived over time to be too big to fail, that are crashing, to artificial intelligence about to take every service job that we can possibly imagine, to a civil war that is taking place in Haiti right beside us. What is happening is that these displacing events worldwide are not only disturbing to some people, but it has made them apathetic and dissonant. And I believe these consequences will have disastrous effects if we don't deal with them in a particular way. Hear, hear. So, Madam Speaker, the truth is that more of the same actually gives you just that, the same result. I've said repeatedly that we'll never really have true economic growth if we keep selling to 3 million people. Our population is just too small. And so we must think globally in terms of transforming our country into a place where our people's purchasing power can actually make them live a better quality of life. So we must think globally, Madam Speaker, to transform our country into the export value-added led economy that sells goods and services to the rest of the world. Jamaica has been pursuing the same economic model and path for too long, without real per capita growth for our people. And yes, all the statistics are heading in the right direction. Our balance sheet looks good. Everything that the minister actually came to Parliament and said that we're on the right track, he's actually right. If you look at those numbers, we are on the right track. The problem is that significant economic growth continues to elude the majority of our people. And it is too marginalized, Madam Speaker, which negatively impacts the purchasing power of most of our people in this country. And so even though we look at the changing skyline in Kingston with all of the rental and commercial properties that are actually going up, the truth is that the model that we're using to somehow grow small business and medium businesses to big businesses in the long term is not working. And we're not identifying where the income and salary is going to come from the majority of people to either buy those places or rent those spaces. And so we can't compete globally, Madam Speaker, with small businesses on the world stage. In other words, you cannot expect a small farmer to internationally compete on the world stage with supplying what he has without completely revamping the agricultural sector, both in terms of policy. If we don't restructure the entire agricultural mindset and have processing plants urgently, Madam Speaker, that meet international standards, creating the demand for small farmers to supply, it makes no sense. It's almost as if we're spitting in the wind. Our habitual thinking, Madam Speaker, has remained the same. We're holding on to old beliefs and systems that have not allowed us to make quantum leaps anywhere. We're afraid of making the paradoxical moves. We have faith in the familiar, and we are not challenging the boundaries that we should be challenging in this era of globalization. And our responsibility, Madam Speaker, as policymakers, is to create the economic climate and mindset that will grow the Jamaican economy in a way that increases the per capita income for all our citizens. And the time to act, Madam Speaker, is now. We cannot wait. We have been waiting for too long. And the time is now to invest the value-added capital into agriculture, medical and wellness tourism. We need to do it in our casinos, and we need to have Jamaica as a creative entertainment hub for the world to see and invest in those industries we should aggressively build out. Listen, I get it, because thinking big and thinking globally can be daunting, especially if you operate and have operated in a small society for most of your life. All of us, thinking big and thinking globally can be daunting for some people who have operated in a small society and community for their entire lives. We have been taught that a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. So we have never been risk takers in a way that we have to take risk. And so the truth is, this is where effective leadership comes in. And I'm not talking about leadership in terms of the JLP or the PMP, because everybody in here is a leader. But effective leadership comes in when you can quell the anxiety of your population, show them the vision, and then you find risk and opportunity in uncertainty. And for all of us in here, that is where we need to start going. Yep. Madam Speaker, the creative economy, and I want the member and the Minister of Culture to listen to me. The creative economy contributes about 6.1% to global GDP, averaging anywhere between 2 to 7% of GDP worldwide. In addition to that, the United Nations projects that Creative industries will generate additional revenues or annual revenues close to $2 trillion and create 50 million jobs worldwide. Half of these workers are women, many of them between the ages of 15 to 29 years old. And the UN also estimates that these are some of the biggest industries that will contribute to the potential for your exports. Over the years, both PNP administrations and JLP administrations have viewed culture as a mere season of ad hoc activities to make people just feel good.
That is true. True.
And the truth is, we don't see it as a major industry that requires stimuli that could significantly grow our economy and better the lives of our people. And Madam Speaker, both sides have reluctantly acted with conviction and financial devotion towards strengthening and developing our people's creative skills and really deepening our culture in this country. In the last financial year, culture as a line item in the recurrent budget received only 5.2% of the total budget.
Oh boy.
And that is compared to tourism, which received 13.5%. The majority of culture's budget was on transportation and people's salaries. The capital budget for culture was the lowest of all ministries, almost zero, a total of 31.8 million or 3.7%. This year is even worse, as there is no real recurrent increases for programs, nor any, Madam Speaker, blue pages. There's no capital expenditure for culture at all. What happens to a country that does not give additional income to build programs for their culture? It is the only ministry that does not have any blue pages. The world is massive with close to 8 billion people, and even though Jamaica has a population of 0.038%, we contribute greatly, almost 1,000% in terms of our global impact in the world. And so we must allocate more resources to build out the framework to transform the cultural teaching of our young people.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
And we must do it in our school system with a sustained capital budget, Madam Speaker.
That's right.
No, but it's a serious thing. Because really what we ought to be doing, Jamaica ought to have two major, globally competitive performing arts high schools in this country. We ought to have one in the corporate area, and we ought to have one in the West. And these two schools must be able to rival international best practices with boarding facilities. We must do it from primary school all the way up. Every child that comes out of a school in Jamaica must be able to either play an instrument, act, do photography, something digital, dance. Cuba does it, visual arts. We must start them young, but the only way we can do it is to have a program similar to the way that we do sports in this country. And we don't have it. The JCDC is underfunded. And it is not right. Our last significant investments in culture, Madam Speaker, was in 1912 and 1958, when the Ward Theatre was built and the Little Theatre was built.
That's it.
You cannot be a cultural powerhouse and not have structures that identify our humanity and identify who we are as people in this country. And we don't have our Jamaicanness solidified throughout our culture and cultural fabric in our schools. And so, Madam Speaker, we have many proud achievements in culture, but we can't measure them because we do it by accident. A child who goes into school, they might have learned to play them drum or guitar when they go to church. And we need to teach them how to read notes, how to play the piano, how to do all of those things, because it should not be when an MP has an additional CDF allowance that they're doing something like what the member of Northwest Manchester is doing to build a studio. Those things should be readily available in our country so that when visitors come here, they're aware. I mean, 40 years ago, after Bob Marley actually did what he has done for us globally, some people don't even know he was from Jamaica. And we really haven't done anything to build any other kind of musical talent in a systematic way, or people just have talent that way. We can't even debate the motion that I tabled in here last year to make him a national hero, and that says a lot. It has fallen off the order paper. So, Madam Speaker, the time is now to press the reset and to become courageous and move away from doing the temporary assignments in culture of what's popular to doing what's right. Because if we fail to do it, our cultural footprint will wash away with the tide of other people, and we cannot have that.
Very sad.
It's very, very sad.
Very sad.
Madam Speaker, a couple of weeks ago I was doing some research on luxury. And the reason why I was doing the research is because I recognized that in 2022, in China, the age group of under 40s, 60% of their purchasing power was to buy luxury items. Subsequent to that, LVMH, a gentleman by the name of Bernard Arnault, who owns Louis Vuitton and Tiffany and Dior and Fendi, his company is now worth $500 billion. Why? Because people around the world are buying more luxury items. It is, and brands, and it baffles me because with inflation, rising interest rates, people talking about a looming recession, that people are actually using their money and spending it on luxury goods, but they are. And by next year, it is estimated that it will even increase to 70%. So 70% of people under 40 in China will purchase, 70% of their purchasing power will go to luxury items. And so luxury is not going away. As a matter of fact, people are now prepared to pay more for first-class tickets. So plane companies, airplane companies, are looking to see how they can build out their cabins to more first-class cabins because luxury is booming around the world. So the question is, if luxury is booming, why isn't Jamaica getting into luxury?
Yes.
Why, Daryl? Why we're not getting into luxury? And so we...
You're not luxury.
So we have all of these niches that are available that we're not taking advantage of. And one of the things in terms of speaking to some of our young designers or some of our young manufacturers, Madam Speaker, because the thing about luxury is that it's rare, it's exclusive, and Jamaica has very rare and exclusive products.
Yes,
you don't necessarily have to scale them in terms of big items. You can have them boutique-like. And there was a young woman that I spoke to who told me, she has a stationery company here, she said, you know, when she went and competed in New York, her products actually made it, 5 of her products actually made it out of 800 stationers in New York. It was an international thing. But she said by the time she got the orders and she had to put everything together, they told her she was uncompetitive because the costs to import the raw materials here, by the time they're to produce them, to export them, they cannot compete globally. And so she's not the only person. Her name is Sherry-Ann Toppin from Toppin Designs. But when I went to the JMEA Expo, for example, I met young soap designers and manufacturers, candle makers. I bought beautiful handbags from a beautiful designer out of Trelawney, for example, with leather. And these are the items that the world wants. The problem is the import structure that we have to import the raw materials are prohibitive. And so when you look at even our Blue Mountain coffee, which is rated as one of the most luxurious brands because of how we have to reap it, why aren't we doing things with it? In other words, if it's so expensive, why haven't we gone to LVMH, for example, and say, look, if you buy a Louis Vuitton bag, you get Blue Mountain coffee. And we partner with them. Or we do the value added. We do it another way. And we say we will produce the value added or give the framework for manufacturers of Blue Mountain coffee to produce. I'm sitting in a New York taxi, for example, from Midtown going down to Hudson Yards, which is about 20 minutes. And all I'm seeing is ads of Mexican avocados. I see it on a repeat about 6 times. Why am I not seeing Jamaican Blue Mountain coffee? Why am I not seeing it in Vogue? Why am I not seeing it in the fashion magazines? Why aren't we promoting it in another way? Nestle Nespresso, their most expensive capsule is a Blue Mountain capsule for their coffee machine. And somehow we're not making the connections that we actually have things that are luxurious that the world wants.
Yes.
And so apart from saying, look, and it's the same thing with our medical tourism and our wellness tourism. It's the same thing with our medical tourism and our wellness tourism. We haven't changed our tourism model in decades. And right now there is an investment banking conference going on in Berlin, where the international, all of the heads, I'm surprised that our minister is not there, but all of them are there. And I spoke with one of the persons there today, and they said to me, look, you know what luxury is going to be in tourism in another couple of years? It's going to be pristine beaches. It's going to be where you can get an exclusive experience, where the beaches are untouched.
That's right.
St. Mary beaches. Right, what Paji? Paji Beach.
Oh, you fix you.
All of those places.
They clean you.
And so we have not married even our culture to tourism. We have been pursuing the same model for too long. Right now, as I said in here once before, Madam Speaker, the global wellness industry generated $4.4 trillion in 2020. At the same time, tourism wellness did $463 billion. Right now, today, health, wellness, fitness, cosmetics are global businesses. We're not taking advantage of it. Moreover, no, listen to me. Moreover, I button for you, you know. Okay. The global, no man, I'm a friend. The global medical tourism market, Madam Speaker, accounted for $104 billion in 2019 and is projected to get to $273 billion. Now more than ever, we must develop our medical tourism industry. We cannot keep pursuing the same sun, sand, sea, and reggae music. We are ideally suited to become a leader in this industry. Right. People have to fly too far to Brazil, India and other places for medical tourism when we can do it right here. And so there needs to be an intense focus to succeed in this industry. And with the rapid advances in medical technology, and I want the Prime Minister to listen to what I'm about to say, with the rapid advances in medical technology and diagnostic equipment, which becomes obsolete very fast, imposing customs duties on medical equipment is counterproductive for our overall healthcare sector. The government would get more from the income tax charged on doctors versus the one-time off duty charge that you're charging on some of this importation of first-generation advanced technological equipment needed to create the facilities. Furthermore, Prime Minister, because I see that you're now listening,
No brainer.
this would naturally develop into a public-private partnership.
It would.
Because then, if you help the private doctors, you could go into a partnership with them to say they could take some of the pressure off the public health system. And so I want you to look at it. Because you've done it for BPO. You do it for tourism. Why aren't we taking the risk to now develop other industries? That time is now more than ever to pivot. You have to start making a paradoxical move. You have to stop having faith in the familiar. And you have to challenge some boundaries. And so if you go into this industry, and even in the cultural one, and start driving the country in that way, in another 2 to 3 years, you will actually see the benefits and the spin-off effects, not only for the health sector, but our people would be immeasurable.
Hear, hear. Hear,
So
hear, hear.
we need to carve out a piece of that luxury market, which is booming. And the time to take advantage of it, Madam Speaker, is now with our Jamaican products and services. I sound like a public service announcement every time I come in here because agriculture is dear to my heart and I will continue to speak about it. And there are over 200,000 farmers in this country, and if we improve their lives and their incomes, we'll improve the economy.
Hear, hear.
And so the truth is, I've said before, but I'll say it again, we still have the mindset in how we address agriculture that we've had for over 100 years. Not since the first banana ship has left this country in 1901 that we have done anything really significant for agriculture. And so the fact is that despite even the refrigerated container that was invented in 1930, our agricultural base and the rationale for which we plant, reap, and supply is not sustainable. I'll just put it that way. And it cannot sustain or even drive agri-exports, which are also in decline. So moving forward, Madam Speaker, we need to be laser focused in terms of our value-added agricultural products with export markets with a value-added potential. Our pepper, our ginger, our cocoa, our coffee, our ackee, our pawpaw, avocados. I don't know why we're not competing globally with avocados, and we have some of the best avocados in the world. Our Sea Island cotton, or organic beef. Some of these products give us the best global competitive advantage anywhere in the world. We have the best soil, and our taste profile beats the world hands down. But, Madam Speaker, we have had a protectionist mindset for a long time, an import substitution model, which really all it has done is build and large monopolies. The idea was that it was supposed to build local industries for export, but that hasn't happened, and so we consistently import 4 times more than we export. And because of it, local production is high. Yes. The only thing that really happens in some of these monopolies is the labor, and a lot of it is automation. So that's why a lot of Jamaicans can't afford protein. That's why we import so much chicken back and offals in this country. Because some who get the import substitution preferential agreements, it's not doing what it ought to do. And I won't go any more on that.
No, not going further.
But other countries, Madam Speaker, have built their per capita wealth for their people in less than 10 years. And for too long, we have not been building ours. So I want to make a proposal. And I know that when I say this, some persons, their backs might get up, but I'm going to say it anyway. When Michael Manley came out with Eat What You Grow and Grow What You Eat, it was relevant to that time. It was 50 years ago. And it was a concept because of the prevailing economic global circumstances, which actually forced us to look inward to plant and feed for ourselves. 50 years later, with globalization, that concept is not focusing outwards. And what we really ought to be saying is support our farmers, grow efficiently, and export for wealth creation, Madam Speaker. Because moving forward, the philosophy proposes that we can plant everything, but we don't have the conditions or the terrain to plant everything for ourselves. And so people get confused that if we plant everything, then we don't have to import anything. It's not true. We can't plant rice efficiently. We just don't have the mechanism to plant rice. There are other things we can't plant efficiently, but I'm not going to say that because some people feel that they're planting them efficiently. But, Madam Speaker, the fact is that that policy as well, and when we say it, it does not support small farmers.
Madam Speaker, I now ask that the member's time for speaking be extended by 15 minutes. Thank you.
The question before the House is that the member be given an additional 15 minutes to complete her presentation. Those in favor? Those against?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I thank my colleagues. Madam Speaker, thank you. this particular agricultural policy that I speak about, which we need to get to, is really more suitable for a globally, technologically driven world. So maybe rather than continuously subliminally seducing our people into believing that part of it and keeping them in a realm that doesn't understand global productivity, we really ought to start incentivizing our farmers adequately.
Hear, hear.
So that the yam farmers in South Trelawney can get the adequate fertilizer, that we can actually be exporting containers of yam coming out of South Trelawney. Make sure stay. You had your chance to speak. Madam Speaker, I was saying something to you. I was saying to you that if we stop to just think about how we need to reorient the system and provide our farmers with a systematic supply and demand approach so that they're not dumping 30% of what they produce, then farmers in your constituency would be given, in South Trelawney, would be given the adequate amounts of fertilizer, water systems, so that the yams that we're producing in the boxes could be supplying the tri-state area, and we would have, people wouldn't be scrambling to be looking for 2 containers of yam consistently leaving our shores, which is what is happening now. People cannot get an adequate supply of yellow yam, which they want in the United States. They're taking it from Nigeria and they're taking it from Ghana. Absolutely. It should not happen. Our shipping systems are a lot better here, coming, rather than taking 18 weeks, it's better coming from here. So logistically, we should be reorienting our agricultural system, Madam Speaker. And not only doing it for yams, but we need to recognize that we must adapt to the world of globalization, because globalization is not adapting to us. It's actually the other way around.
That's right.
And so even the global demand for hot sauce, we're not participating in it. We're not having our farmers designated to say, look, go into pepper farming. You know why? Because in 2020 it was a $4.3 billion industry.
Wow.
And by 2026 it's going to be $6 billion. Right now there are companies beating Jamaica with some taste bad pepper sauce internationally that tastes like salt and vinegar, when you can have so many other companies like Walkerswood and Spurtree and others that just need for us to start setting up the value-added factories that they can plant all the pepper in the world. That's what the Dominican Republic and that's what Costa Rica does. They have redesigned their markets to plant and to produce plantain and banana chips. Most Jamaicans don't realize that most of the plantain chips that they buy in Jamaica are made in Costa Rica and made in the Dominican Republic and distributed here. Because big companies, because they have economies of scale. What is it that we're producing? What is Jamaica known for internationally that we export? What have we put our farmers in? We've been doing it for the last 100 years the same way. That is why, Prime Minister, Floyd, give me a minute here. That is why, PM, I'm so excited about this new bamboo pulp investment, the $60 billion investment that's taking place in Westmoreland. And I want you to understand that they need 25,000 acres of idle sugar land. What that will do for farmers, at least 1,000 farmers can be planting bamboo. And it's a long-term sustainable export project that will give bamboo pulp to the rest of the world. We need more investments like that so our farmers can actually have an adequate supply. When I talk to a St. Thomas farmer, woman, grandmother at the St. Thomas market, for example, who has her granddaughter sleeping on her lap on a Saturday morning in the hot sun. All of us have that in our constituencies at markets. And she has to come out because she has to sell 1 box of plantain. She has to sell that 1 box of plantain because she has to send that child, her grandchild, to school. Because everybody, the grandmother still maintains the grandchild in some multi-generational homes. But she shouldn't have to do that. She shouldn't have to leave where she's coming from far to sell 1 box of plantain. She should be able to know that Jamaica has plantain factories, that if she plants her entire 1 acre in plantain, she will have a market for it and a demand for it. And they will come and pick it up. But we need to have the factories, we need to have the cold storage, we need to have the dry storage, and we need to have the supply chain from the beginning all the way to the packaging, from the inputs all the way to the manufacturing of the finished product for the export. No, Luther and I work well together. Yeah, man. The fact is, Madam Speaker, Deputy,
Go on, do your thing.
Madam Speaker, the truth is we can be doing better. We can be doing a lot better. And we can be doing better because we have all of the ingredients for that value chain, from the beginning all the way to the end. And we have the shipping. We're so geographically positioned adequately to ship it.
Yes.
But it takes vision. And
Management.
if we put our farmers in priority crops, if RADA comes back to me one more time and asks me to give incentives for Irish potato, I think I'm going to scream. Because it is not earning foreign exchange for our farmers. Yeah, I know. That's fine. But, Madam Speaker, the issue of producing efficient farmers to make a good standard of living must be imperative at this point in time. We must give our farmers guaranteed prices on priority crops, and we must support them for export in agriculture and value-added products with lower food prices for Jamaicans. And if we do so, we can also build a school feeding program to maximize the use of local produce, Madam Speaker.
Hear, hear.
And so the truth is, I stand here, and the member from St. Thomas says I have one more year, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful because I was born in Jamaica, I was schooled in Jamaica, and I've given most of my life to Jamaica. And 30 years ago, Madam Speaker, 30 years ago, I had the opportunity. 30 years ago, I had an opportunity to walk a global stage, labeled as a Jamaican, and won. And so I'm always Jamaican first, and I'm grateful.
Hey!
So the truth is, Madam Speaker, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my son, my husband. I'm grateful for my friends who I love dearly, both here and abroad. I am grateful for the fact that for nearly 2 decades, through the people of Southeast St. Anne, who have kept me there for nearly 2 decades, that I've been able to serve in this house under 3 different prime ministers. I'm grateful.
Hear, hear.
And I'm grateful too because I've made friends on this side of the house and that side of the house. And the truth is, I feel like I'm in a claiming race. And I'm grateful, Madam Speaker, that despite my rebelliousness, my party leader continues to give me a pass to be who I am.
Hear, hear. Hear, hear.
So, Madam Speaker, I am Jamaican first. I am Jamaican first. I am Jamaican. No, seriously. I am Jamaican first. All the time and every time. And I'm Jamaican because
Dreaming. Wake up.
I have an unabashed and feisty courage. I'm defiant in the face of overpowering opposition. And I understand that I'm not unique in this position. All of us have it within us. And we have it within us because we're Jamaicans. We have a mobilizing spirit to action. We are assertive. And nobody can bludgeon our hopes or our aspirations into acquiescence. And we don't want them to bludgeon the hopes of our people into acquiescence either. And it's not as if we never got that from somewhere. We got it from somewhere. All our leaders that have come through this house have demonstrated that same kind of courage, that same kind of unabashed resolve, that regardless of who it is in the world, regardless of class, rank, or personality, money, or status, once it is wrong internationally, they will take up for the underdog. That is who we are. And that is why, it's no secret, that is why we stood up first in the world and said we weren't going to trade with an apartheid South Africa. That's why persons that led on your side fought for human rights. That's why we had the dignity in the 1970s to make sure that people, when our reggae musicians and others sang about concrete being coal ground, Michael Manley said, look, equal work for equal pay. People must be able to own land. All of these, this is who we are.
Exactly.
Right? And it is not that we are going to be counterproductive. That is why all of us have that courage. That is why it behoves me
to challenge in September.
That is why, hold on, you all don't want that. Because if I do that, I don't intend to do that.
No.
Okay. So, Madam Speaker.
It's not about
Stop.
Lisa. It's not about
It's not about me, it's about Jamaica.
Here.
So, Madam Speaker, that is why I can't understand. That is why I cannot understand how we have treated some of our friends internationally. No, it's not only Venezuela. We must never abandon our friends, whether it is the United States or Venezuela. Because Venezuela and the Venezuelan people, when we needed it most, gave us a $3 billion loan at 1%. 1%. And in July of 2015, they actually allowed us to pay $1.5 billion, which not only reduced our debt to GDP ratio, but it increased our international financial standing in real aggregate terms.
Absolutely.
Because of it. And what did we do? We compulsorily acquired their shares in late 2017, early 2018. The problem is now, while that court case, because Venezuela has sued Jamaica, that court case is in abeyance indefinitely. Meanwhile, Venezuela is still selling oil to other people in the Caribbean and at discounted rates when we're buying oil at different rates. And so what I'm saying is we cannot be seen to abandon our friends, whether it is the United States or whether it is Venezuela.
That's right.
And we also cannot be seen, Madam Speaker, to be doing the bidding of other people over the dominion of a sovereign nation. And so I ask, where has the courage in our diplomacy and of friendship, where has it gone?
Yes.
Because Jamaica has always been willing to provide visionary leadership in the ACP, in CARICOM. And I recognize the Prime Minister, I recognize your meeting with the UN Secretary General, and I want to take the time to applaud the conversations that are taking place. It is a good example for the world to see that we are entering further along the path of climate protection, climate resilience, and all of the attendant issues that go into protecting a small island developing state. And this is where I want to come to. Jamaica also has to lead, not listen, lead on the fact that we're having a civil war in Haiti, in one of our neighbors. Doesn't sit well with me, and the fact that we need to become a principal interlocutor in working to get the United States to remove the embargo on Cuba are things that our foreign affairs policy needs to continuously work at. We have two neighbors we have 2 neighbors that are in turmoil. Madam Speaker, I only need 5 more minutes. And we cannot be seen as such a courageous nation that we are to have this happening right beside us, and we're not doing everything in our power to help our brothers and sisters in those 2 countries. And so, Madam Speaker, while the world continues to change rapidly, because it is, and it is perhaps a scary time for a lot of people, especially looking at where automation took away manufacturing jobs and then they went into services, and now artificial intelligence looks like it's going to take away service jobs. We have to prepare our people.
Yes,
this is not something that is just going to come as a 9-day wonder. Artificial intelligence is here.
Yep.
It is going to take jobs. So we have to prepare our people's imagination, efficiency, productivity to go ahead of it, and our skills. And we have those industries. We can do it in culture in terms of globalizing. We can do it in medical tourism and wellness tourism. Value-added agriculture, because an avatar cannot make food. We can. And so, Madam Speaker, the time has come to start listening again, to start acting, to start doing those big things and making those bold moves, to think big and to go global. Because we need to start asking ourselves who we are and what we believe in. And the time has come. We have a moment to rekindle our soul for global humanity. And we also have a moment to say to our people that not only must they get more connected, but they must be calm about their activism and encouraged to fight for greater things, greater than themselves, while at the same time, we must encourage them to eschew political hypocrisy about correctedness. And we must also build the industries. We must also build the industries that can help them to increase their per capita income. We have that moment. If we squander it, and if we turn a blind eye to it, it is going to miss us. And we must seize it. And I fear that if we don't put in place these mechanisms for Jamaica to make a quantum leap in terms of our global competitiveness, the republic that we all seek might actually be one of a banana variety. Because we will not be competing on the world stage, which we must. Because only catering to 3 million people is not enough to give us the prosperity that we're looking for, Prime Minister.
That's right.
We need to be selling to the rest of the world. So let us all be emboldened with the courage that I know that we all have to make those moves and to start doing things differently. Because more of the same will just give us more of the same. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Madam Speaker, we had 2 excellent presentations today, and I ask my colleagues to show their appreciation for the presentations. So, Madam Speaker, I now ask that the sectoral debate be suspended.
Members, the question before the House is that the sectoral debate be now suspended. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. The sectoral debate is suspended.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I now ask for recommittal of items announcement through to public business. Thank you.
Members, the question is that we revert to the agenda beginning with the item announcements through to public business. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Announcements.
Laid on the table of the House today are the following. Ministry paper number 47 of 2023 entitled Annual Report of the Agro Investment Corporation for the year ended March 31, 2023 and Annual Report of the Agro Investment Corporation 2020. Ministry paper number 48 of 2023 entitled Annual Report of the National Environment and Planning Agency for 2011-2012 and Annual Report of the National Environment and Planning Agency for 2021-2022. Corrigendum to pages 14, 39 to 40 and 50 of the Annual Report of the Bank of Jamaica 2022, which was tabled in the House of Representatives on Tuesday, April 18, 2023. And the Auditor General's Department Certified Appropriation Account for Head 6000, Office of the Services Commission for the year 2019-2020.
We're now at bills brought from the Senate.
Come in, madam. Yes, madam. The following is a message from the President of the Senate. To the Honorable House of Representatives, I have the honor to advise the Honorable House of Representatives that on the 12th day of May 2023, the Senate agreed to the House of Representatives amendment to a bill entitled An Act to Establish what is to be called the National Compliance and Regulatory Authority to regulate the processes and practices connected with the manufacture, production, processing, and treatment of commodities for which a compulsory standard specification or technical regulation has been declared, and for connected matters. Signed, Thomas Tavares, Vincent O.J., CD, KCJP, President of the Senate. Also, I have the honor to advise the Honorable House of Representatives that on the 12th day of May, 2023, a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Copyright Act was passed in the Senate. Signed, Thomas Tavares, Vincent O.J., CD, KCJP, President of the Senate.
Petitions, papers, reports from committees, notices of motions given orally, questions and answers to questions, motions that may be made at the commencement of public business requiring notice, motions relating to sittings of the House, motions for leave to introduce bills, presentation of bills without leave of the House first obtained, public business.
Madam Speaker, today I rise to introduce an act to validate and confirm as lawful the purported continuation in office of the members of the Consumer Protection Tribunal and all official acts done by them in good faith and inadvertent as to their not having been in compliance with the provisions of the Consumer Protection Act in the purported exercise of the functions conferred upon them during the period commencing the 28th day of May 2021 and ending on the 8th day of May 2022, to indemnify the members of the Consumer Protection Tribunal and persons who are liable to be proceeded against on the grounds that the acts were unauthorized, illegal, and improper from liability in relation thereto, and for connected matters cited as the Consumer Protection Validation and Indemnity of Tribunal Act of 2023. Madam Speaker, the Consumer Protection Tribunal, hereinafter referred to as the Tribunal, is established under Section 44A of the Consumer Protection Act, hereinafter referred to as the Act, to settle disputes arising out of complaints made by consumers to the Consumer Affairs Commission. The Minister in question, which is the Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce, appointed the Tribunal pursuant to paragraph 1 of the third schedule to act for a period of 3 years with effect from the 28th day of May 2018 to the 27th day of May 2021. This was tabled in the House a few weeks ago, from the upper house. This appointment, Madam Speaker, was published in the Gazette in accordance with paragraph 7 of the third schedule to the Act. However, after the expiration of its tenure, the members of the Tribunal continued in office beyond the 27th day of May 2021, without being reappointed in contravention of paragraph 1 of the third schedule to the Act. Consequently, the bill seeks to validate and confirm as lawful the purported continuation in office of the members of the Tribunal and all official acts purportedly done by them in good faith and inadvertent as to their continuation in office, and official acts not having been in compliance with the provisions of the Act during the period commencing on the 20th day of May 2021 and ending on the 8th day of May 2022, and to indemnify the members of the Tribunal and persons who are liable to be proceeded against on the ground that the acts were unauthorized, illegal, or improper from liability in relation thereto. Madam Speaker, I will now present the main clauses of the bill. The preamble provides the purpose of the legislation. It details, as I have just described, that the Tribunal, which was initially duly appointed, continued in office beyond the 27th day of May 2021 without being reappointed. In contravention of paragraph 1 of the third schedule of the Act, Madam Speaker, therefore it is desirable to validate and confirm as lawful the continuation in office of the Tribunal and the official acts of the members of the Tribunal during the period May 28, 2021 to May 8, 2022. Clause 1 has the short title of the bill. Clause 2, Madam Speaker, subsection 1 provides that the continuation in office of the members of the Consumer Protection Tribunal specified in the schedule and all acts of those members in the exercise of their functions in good faith and inadvertent as to their continuation in office and acts not having been in compliance with the provisions of the Act during the period commencing 28th day of May 2021 and ending on the 8th day of May 2022 are declared to have been validly, properly and lawfully made and done to all intents and purposes and with effect as if authorized pursuant to the Act. And subsection 2 provides that every person liable to be legally proceeded against on the ground that any of the acts referred to in subsection 1 was unauthorized, unlawfully done, or otherwise illegal or improper for any such reason is hereby freed, acquitted, discharged, and indemnified, as well as against the King's most gracious Majesty, his heirs and successors, as well as against all persons whatever from such liability. Madam Speaker, the schedule provides for the list of persons that were members of the tribunal that continued in office after the expiration of the term to which the bill applies. The memorandum of objects and reasons stipulates that the key objectives of the Act. And Madam Speaker, I now invite members of this Honourable House to support the passage of this bill.
Madam Speaker, the opposition has no objection to what the minister is proposing.
Minister, it doesn't seem as if they're ready, so you can conclude the debate.
Yeah. Madam Speaker, I now ask for second reading of the bill.
Members, the question before the House is that the bill be read a second time. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Validate and Confirm as Lawful the purported continuation in office of the members of the Consumer Protection Tribunal and all official acts done by them in good faith and inadvertent as to their not having been in compliance with the provisions of the Consumer Protection Act in the purported exercise of the functions conferred upon them during the period commencing on the 28th day of May 2021 and ending on the 8th day of May 2022 to indemnify the members of the Consumer Protection Tribunal and persons who are liable to be proceeded against on the ground that the acts were unauthorized, illegal, or improper from liability in relation thereto and for connected matters. Read a second time.
Members, the House will now resolve itself into a committee of the whole House to consider the bill clause by clause. Members, I put clause 1. Those in favour? Members, I put clause 2. Those in favour? The ayes have it. I put the schedule. Those in favour? The ayes have it. I now put the preamble. Those in favour? The ayes have it. I put the title and the enacting clause. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Members, the question is that I do report the bill as having passed committee stage without any amendments. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. Members of the House, I do report the bill as having passed committee stage with no amendments. Minister? Minister?
Madam Speaker, I ask for a third reading of the bill.
The question is that the bill be read a third time. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Validate and Confirm as Lawful the purported continuation in office of the members of the Consumer Protection Tribunal and all official acts done by them in good faith and inadvertent as to their not having been in compliance with the provisions of the Consumer Protection Act in the purported exercise of the functions conferred upon them during the period commencing on the 28th day of May 2021 and ending on the 8th day of May 2022 to indemnify the members of the Consumer Protection Tribunal and persons who are liable to be proceeded against on the ground that the acts were unauthorized, illegal, or improper from liability in relation thereto and for connected matters, read a third time and passed.
Members, the bill has been passed.
Madam Speaker, I now ask for a recommittal of statements by ministers.
Members, the question before the House is for the recommittal of the item on the agenda, statements by ministers. Those in favour? Those against? The ayes have it. House Leader.
A bill entitled An Act to Validate and Confirm as Lawful the purported continuation in office of the members of the Consumer Protection Tribunal and all official acts done by them in good faith and inadvertent as to their not having been in compliance with the provisions of the Consumer Protection Act in the purported exercise of the functions conferred upon them during the period commencing on the 28th day of May 2021 and ending on the 8th day of May 2022 to indemnify the members of the Consumer Protection Tribunal and persons who are liable to be proceeded against on the ground that the acts were unauthorized, illegal, or improper from liability in relation thereto and for connected matters, read a third time and passed.
Madam Speaker, I beg for your understanding. The matter of which I'm about to address, it's necessary for me to lay out the historical background and the context in which what I'm about to speak is taking place.
Very well, Minister.
Thank you. The copies are on their way and will be here long before I'm finished.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Madam Speaker, the government of Jamaica has concluded on the first phase of the compensation restructuring with groups representing over 99% of several central government employees, or approximately 99,000 of approximately 100,000 central government employees. We embrace the principle, Madam Speaker, in this House that we should first settle with employees in the administrative and professional central government, well, public service, and then address salaries of parliamentarians. Public bodies, Madam Speaker, account for 10,000 employees, roughly speaking, and of the 140 public bodies, approximately 130 of them, or 93% by number, have already implemented a restructured public sector compensation. Those that remain include public bodies that perform commercial functions. And in some instances, public bodies of those that remain have received non-objection to implement, but the implementation is not yet finalized. The Ministry of Finance and Public Service is supporting these public bodies to finalize in the soonest possible time. The progress of which I have just summarized does not mean that there aren't issues to be dealt with. I want to use this opportunity to give the assurance that we will address outstanding matters and issues, though I do not propose to address them in my statement today, and ask that our discussion be limited to the subject of my statement, which is salaries for members of the legislature and the executive. Madam Speaker, the Jamaican Constitution establishes three co-equal branches of government: the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. Salaries for the judicial branch are determined by a process involving an independent commission as laid out in law since 1992, more than 30 years ago. And last week we tabled the recommendation of the 10th such commission and finalized that process for the current period for that branch of government. Adjustments to salaries for the legislature and executive were once determined by ad hoc committee appointed from time to time by the Prime Minister of the day. But since 1989, more than 30 years ago, these salaries have, by practice, been determined by formulaic reference to the salary scale in the civil service. Madam Speaker, a recap is probably appropriate. And this brief history borrows extensively on the history prepared in the Clark Report of 2004. The words that follow, until I indicate otherwise, are attributable to this report. Prior to 1972, Madam Speaker, pay increases for parliamentarians were, as I said, effected on an ad hoc basis, and because of this, salaries payable to this category lag behind what could be considered reasonable when compared to salaries of others. In 1972, Prime Minister Manley appointed the Ashenaim Committee to investigate and make recommendations to the government in respect of parliamentary salaries. The increases, however, were not immediately implemented due to objection, mainly from the opposition at the time, concerning the levels recommended. The Standing Finance Committee of the House of Representatives was requested to consider the proposals, and the Standing Finance Committee recommended that the increases with minor adjustments should be implemented, i.e. the increases in the report. And this was approved by the House in 1973 for implementation effective April 1st, 1973. And it was further decided that cabinet members should receive salary of $1 per month above the salary of permanent secretaries. Notwithstanding this decision to link Increases did not happen again until 1980, even though permanent secretaries got increases in 1974, 1978, and 79. In 1980, Prime Minister Edward Seaga appointed another committee to examine emoluments of parliamentarians and make recommendations as to the adjustments that should be made. The committee was chaired by Mr. Ronald Sasso, and this committee recommended substantial increases in salary for parliamentarians and further recommended that a machinery be promptly put in place to conduct pay reviews on a more structured basis. Following the recommendation from the Sasso Committee, a standing committee of the House decided that cabinet ministers should at all times receive, and I'm quoting, cabinet ministers should at all times receive an amount equivalent to not less than $52 per annum above salaries paid to permanent secretaries. Consequently, the salary of the cabinet minister was set at $52 per annum above the maximum of the highest level permanent secretary, effective April 1st of 1986, July 1986. And the intention was that the salary of all other parliamentarians would have moved proportionately in keeping with the recommendations of the Sasso Committee. In the latter part of 1989, Prime Minister Michael Manley established a committee chaired by Douglas Fletcher to establish criteria for and the extent of the state and establish criteria for and extent of state and private sector support for political parties. The committee was later requested to include matters relating to salaries. And in the report handed down by the Fletcher Committee, it was recommended that the formula which sets the salary of the cabinet minister at $52 per annum above that of a permanent secretary be retained. Based on the established linkage between the salary of members of Parliament and the civil service, which was agreed to in 1981 and recommended by the Sasso Committee of 1980 and the Fletcher Committee of 1989, the salaries of parliamentarians have, since the 1990s, moved automatically whenever there's a general salary increase in the civil service. The established linkages from the early 1990s are as follows. Prime Minister at 33.3% above the Cabinet Minister. The Deputy Prime Minister at 16.5% above the Cabinet Minister, 16.65%. The Minister of Finance at 8% above the Cabinet Minister. The Cabinet Minister at $52 per annum above the maximum of the permanent secretary scale. The Minister of State and the Speaker of the House at 12.5% below the Cabinet Minister. The Leader of the Opposition, Parliamentary Secretary, Deputy Speaker, 25% below the Cabinet Minister, and other members of Parliament, 37.5% below the Cabinet Minister. I should mention, Madam Speaker, that the Prime Minister Patterson appointed the Clark Committee of 2004, and it recommended delinking the salaries of members of the executive and legislature from that of senior civil servants, and proposed a new basis of pay inclusive of performance incentives, which together would have yielded much higher pay at the time. However, this report was not accepted, and I believe the then opposition objected, and pay in the executive and legislature have been determined in a manner consistent with the framework laid out in the Sasso and Fletcher committee reports of 1980 and 1989. The two changes to that framework have been that the salary of the Leader of the Opposition was moved to be equivalent to the salary of the Deputy Prime Minister, and the salary of the Speaker of the House was moved to be equivalent to that of a Cabinet Minister at some time over that 30-year period. I don't have the exact date. So, Madam Speaker, elements of the Sasso-Fletcher framework, i.e. setting the Cabinet Minister at $52 per annum above the maximum salary level of the Permanent Secretary, have been applied in determining pay for Cabinet Ministers since 1986, i.e. for 37 years. Now, there have been instances over that time when permanent secretaries have been adjusted and the Cabinet Ministers did not follow up inadvertently. But the principle has been in existence for 37 years. Moreover, Madam Speaker, the benchmarking of salaries to Cabinet Ministers the benchmarking of salaries of Cabinet Ministers to permanent secretaries more generally has existed since April 1st of 1973. That is for 50 years. In 1973, it was $1 per month over permanent secretaries, or $12 a year. And in 1986, it moved to $1 per week, which is $52. I suppose we should do $1 per day now. But so the concept of linking the cabinet members' pay to that of the permanent secretary has existed unbroken for 50 years. Over time, Madam Speaker, while there have been squabbles and some disunity at times over parliamentary salaries in this House, this framework has endured. And Madam Speaker, we respect that endurance and therefore do not propose to change that framework. We propose to apply the existing framework for cabinet ministers to the new restructured central government compensation scale. Now, Madam Speaker, before I get to the precise level of salaries, let me say that the application of this framework will result in levels of salary increases that will attract attention, and rightly so. As such, as accountable officers, it's necessary to provide the context, the thought process, and the principles at work. Madam Speaker, while much has been ventilated in the public domain, it has escaped media attention that the public sector restructuring has resulted in significant movement in salary scales for a majority of persons who work in the public service. You don't increase public sector compensation by $100 billion without such an outcome, no matter what may dominate the headlines. And I need to provide some examples, Madam Speaker, since these have, though it's public, have not appeared in the public domain. Just by way of example, the salary scale for previously designated LMO TS6 officers who are ancillary supervisors and skilled artisans, i.e. certified and experienced mechanics and plumbers and electricians who work in maintenance departments in the public service, those salaries have moved from, the scale has moved from $13,700 to $15,500 a week, effective April 1st, 2021, to $47,656 to $64,000 per week, effective April 1st, 2023, an increase of 247% to 313% in the salary scale over this period. This corresponding salary scale over the same period for the LMO TS5 was between 200% and 360%. For the LMO TS4, between 178 and 230%. For the LMO TS3, between 80% and 120%. For the LMO TS2, from 60% to 100%. At the starting level of the previous LMO scale, the salary scales for the LMO TS1, who are our groundsmen and watchmen and entry-level ancillary workers in the public service, has moved from $9,781 to $11,000 a week to $16,400 to $22,000 per week as at April 1st, 2023, and that salary scale movement reflects 68% to 100%. Madam Speaker, there are approximately 6,000 Jamaicans in the categories of previously designated LMO TS1 to TS6 officers. Madam Speaker, the context of what we're doing is a restructured public sector compensation in which compensation scales have been stretched to address the need to attract and retain talent at all levels to run the public bureaucracy, both at the administrative levels and today at the political levels. The political directorate is a policy-making arm of government that sits at the top of the administrative arm of government. Permanent secretaries who have administrative control over their ministries are responsible for executing the policy directions and ensuring the delivery of the policy outcomes that come from the political directorate. Though roles differ, it's a continuous chain from the political directorate to the public sector officers. The political directorate provides strategic direction for the public sector and is therefore part of the delivery of public services through the Jamaican public sector. From the analysis conducted by Ernst & Young, who were consultants to the government on the public sector restructuring, the senior levels in the public sector were the furthest away from market. This is consistent with anecdotal evidence and has been a significant problem that has cost the country. Madam Speaker, if the public sector is unable to retain its leadership or to attract the most appropriate, experienced, and qualified leadership, the entire organization is put in jeopardy. We have to be able to attract new blood into the leadership levels of the public sector, to infuse new ways of thinking, new ideas for the organization's own growth and development. And we also need to attract persons to leadership, whether those persons are internal to the organization. For internal persons, outside of their own ambitions, they need to see that stepping up to leadership is worthwhile. And for the external prospects, they too need to see that making a transition is worthwhile to step into leadership in public sector organizations. Persons need to be encouraged in making career moves into public sector leadership, central government, public bodies, the political directorate, without putting their economic security at total risk. As such, Madam Speaker, there has been significant adjustment to the salary scales for the leadership across the public sector. And bear with me while I just give a few examples. And I've brought some of the salary scales to share. In the police force, the salary scale for the deputy commissioner, before you consider other things, has moved from 9 million to 10.8 million to 14 million to 17 million, effective April 1, 2023. The salary scale for the superintendent was 5.6 million to 6.7 million. And for 2023, that's now 9.5 million to 11.6 million. For the deputy superintendent, who used to be at 3.3 million to 4 million, that's now at 6.2 million to 7.5 million. For the legal profession in the public service, Madam Speaker, the legal officer 6 has moved from 4.9 to 5.9 million, if you can just bear those numbers, as at April 2021, to 10.1 to 13.6 million. 4.9 to 5.9 to 10.1 to 13.6. The legal officer 5 has moved from 4.1 to 4.8 to 10.1 to 13.6 million. In the nursing profession, the salary scale in the leadership, Madam Speaker, has moved from 3.5 to 4.2, which is what it was in 2021. 3.5 million to 4.2 million to 9.25 million to 10.995 million as at April 2023, Madam Speaker. For the second layer in the nursing profession, not just the leadership, it was 3 million to 3.6, and it's now moved to 8.25 million to 9.8 million as at April 2023. For medical doctors, and here I talk about not the consultants who earn much more than the other doctors. They used to be called junior doctors. We just call them doctors today. The salaries before this reform at the highest level of the medical doctor profession, the salaries, were 3 million to 3.6 million in 2021, and we have moved those now to 8.2 million to 9.8 million. The salary scale for medical doctors at the MO2 level were 2.6 million to 3.1 million, and they have moved to 7.3 million to 8.7 million. The salary scale at the MO1 level was 2.2 million to 2.7 million. That's moved to 6.3 to 7.5 million. Madam Speaker, it's necessary because the media hasn't really done it for us, even though the information is public. And I just think in coming to address salaries that we know will gather headlines in the public domain, it is necessary to put out information, Madam Speaker, where we have addressed salaries in the leadership levels of the public sector. And just to continue, Madam Speaker, the salary scale in the teaching profession, Madam Speaker, and I'll spend a little more time on this one, for principals of tertiary colleges, salaries were 4.3 million to 4.9 million, and those have moved to 10.4 million to $13 million, Madam Speaker, for 2023. The salaries for principals of the larger secondary schools used to be $2.9 million to $3.4 million, and those salaries are now $8.5 million to $10.9 million, Madam Speaker. The salary scale for principals of the smallest secondary schools used to be $2.2 million to $2.6 million in April as at April 2021. Those as at April 2023 are now $5.6 to $7.2 million. So 2.2 to 2.6 moved to 5.6 to 7.2. Madam Speaker, the salary scale for secondary school vice principals has moved from $2.1 million to $2.4 million as at April 1st, 2021, and I will provide all this information. I don't want to circulate it now because it will just distract a little bit. But I think members of this House need to be armed with all of this information. Okay? From vice principals from 2.1 to 2.4 million to 4.6 million to $5.8 million as at April 2023. For the large, and it doesn't stop at the secondary schools, for the largest primary schools, salaries have moved from 2.4 million to 2.6 million as at April 1st, 2021 to 7 million to 8.9 million as at April 1st, 2023. Madam Speaker, salary scales for principals at the smallest primary schools, which used to be 1.7 million to 2 million as at April 1st, 2021, are now 5.6 million to 7.2 million as at April 2023. For the Master Teacher 1, salaries used to be 1.6 to 1.86 million, and now, Madam Speaker, as at 2021, and now as at 2023, they're 4 million to $5.1 million at April 2023. And Madam Speaker, this is just a small sample, just sampling the leadership in the public service. I could go to the leadership in all areas: probation officers, aftercare officers, medical records clerks, etc. Across the public service, Madam Speaker, we have, among other things, moved the leadership of the public service up in compensation because of the findings of the market survey by Ernst & Young, that they were furthest away from market, and out of anecdotal experience, the dire problem we are having in the public service with attracting and retaining the kind of leadership that we need. And I set this out, Madam Speaker, just to set facts out. And I'm glad that there's no banging of desks of applause, because the purpose is not to seek applause, Madam Speaker, but for the public to be aware. These salaries are up, have been up on the Ministry of Finance website for the past 6 weeks. There's been no article on any of them, Madam Speaker, and I just think that the context needs to be provided for the changes that we will be announcing today. So, Madam Speaker, in addition to all of those leadership levels, at the permanent secretary level, salary and Madam Speaker, allowances have featured as a part of compensation before. Those would, in the scale of numbers I've just described, they pale in significance to the movements that I've just described. For the leadership in the civil service, Madam Speaker, the permanent secretary salary scale moved from 7.4 to 9.26 million as at April 2021 to 15.8 million to 21.2 million as at April 2023. Now, members of this House who are paying attention will immediately say, wait, permanent secretaries used to make 7.4 to 9.2. Cabinet ministers didn't make that. And the paradigm was $52 above. Well, what happened, Madam Speaker, is that I believe when permanent secretaries were moved away from chief technical directors, they used to be paid at the same. Somehow the corresponding adjustment for ministers did not happen. Okay? But the spirit has always been $52 more than the permanent secretary. Madam Speaker, the background and context is critically important. And as I mentioned, as a country, just repeating myself, if we're to achieve our development objectives after years of macroeconomic stability, the path ahead will require that we attract new blood into the leadership levels of the public sector and to infuse new ways of thinking, new ideas for the organization's own growth and development. And we need to be able to attract persons, Madam Speaker, from within the public service to aspire for leadership as well. For internal persons, again, outside of their own ambitions, they need to see that stepping up is worthwhile. And for external prospects, they need to see that making a transition, Madam Speaker, will not result in them living in circumstances that they would find difficult to make ends meet. So, Madam Speaker, we have made these adjustments across the entire leadership level of the administrative public sector and propose to do so for the political directorate as well. As such, Madam Speaker, consistent with the Fletcher framework of 1989, Madam Speaker, the Cabinet has affirmed and approved the following for salaries of the National Political Directorate effective April 1st, 2022, and that has provided a framework that the Cabinet Minister is paid at $52 higher than the maximum of the Permanent Secretary's salary scale, which has been the framework for the past 37 years. That, Madam Speaker, the Minister of Finance is paid at 7.5% above the level of the Cabinet Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister at 12.5% above the level of the Cabinet Minister, and the Prime Minister at 25% above the level of the Cabinet Minister, for the difference in levels of complexity, risk, and responsibilities. For the Minister of State to be compensated at levels of 80% of the Cabinet Minister, the Speaker of the House to be at the same level, to continue to be at the same level as the Cabinet Minister, the Parliamentary Secretary at 75% of the Cabinet Minister, the Leader of the Opposition at the same level as the Deputy Prime Minister, and the Deputy Speaker at 75% of the Cabinet Minister, and the Member of Parliament at 62% of the Cabinet Minister. Madam Speaker, before itemizing the dollar amounts that arise from this framework, and I want again to stress that this framework is the same framework that has been in place since 1989, but it's important to note, Madam Speaker, that whereas at the current time and for the past 30 years, the Prime Minister earns and has earned 33% above the Cabinet Minister, and the Deputy Prime Minister earns and has earned 16.5% more than the Cabinet Minister, and the Minister of Finance has earned and earns 8% more than the Cabinet Minister. We are revising those compensation bands downward to 25%, 12.5%, and 7.5% respectively above the salary level of the Cabinet Minister for the Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, and Minister of Finance. Madam Speaker, this framework implies the following salaries for members of the political directorate, and it's all here for members to take with them. And bear with me because I have to read a number of numbers. Madam Speaker, for the Cabinet Minister, payment at $52 above the level of the Permanent Secretary will result in a salary as at April 1st, 2022 of $17.866 million, with respect to April 1st, 2023, $20.2 million, and with respect to April 1st, 2024, $22.87 million. Madam Speaker, for the Minister of Finance, with respect to April 1st, 2022, and I think you'd want me to read them all out, Madam Speaker. April 1st, 2022, $19.2 million. For April 1st, 2023, $21.7 million. For April 1st, 2024, $24.6 million. I'm rounding up to the nearest 100,000. For the Deputy Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, $20.1 million as at April 1st, 2022, $22.7 million as at April 1st, 2023, and $25.7 million as at April 1st, 2024. For the Prime Minister, Madam Speaker, salary of $22.3 million as at April 1st, 2022, $25.3 million at April 1st, 2023, and salary of $28.6 million as at April 1st, 2024. Madam Speaker, For the Minister of State, who is at 80% of the Cabinet Minister, a salary of $14.3 million as at April 1st, 2022, $16.2 million as April 1st, 2023, and $18.3 million as at April 1st, 2024. Madam Speaker, for the Speaker of the House to be compensated at the level of the Cabinet Minister, which I just read. For the Parliamentary Secretary, who was benchmarked, Madam Speaker, at 75% of the Cabinet Minister, the level would be $13.4 million for April 1st, 2022, $15.2 million for April 1st, 2023, and $17.2 million effective April 1st, 2024. Madam Speaker, for the Leader of the Opposition, who's compensated at the same level as the Deputy Prime Minister, which I read earlier and will not repeat. For the Deputy Speaker, Madam Speaker, compensated at the same level, at 75% of the Cabinet member, which is the same level as the Parliamentary Secretary. I won't repeat that. And then for the Member of Parliament, Madam Speaker, who's compensated at the level of 62% of the Cabinet Minister, salary for April 1st, 2022 of $11.1 million, April 1st, 2023, $12.5 million, and April 1st, 2024, $14.2 million. Madam Speaker, previous allowances enjoyed by members of the Political Directorate, including housing and telephone allowance, will be discontinued effective April 1st, 2022. Madam Speaker, I find it necessary to emphasize that the judiciary continues to be the highest paid branch of government, which has been and should always be, in my opinion, I believe the opinion of the government, and the opinion of the government, the case, and for good reason. The order passed last week addressed judicial salaries, which is the requirement. However, by law, for members of the judiciary, there are other elements of compensation consistent with the law, which were recommended by the Independent Commission and were accepted by the government. These were not the subject of an order and did not need to be, but would have been embedded in the Independent Commission's report tabled in Parliament, but were not picked up in the media. When these cash emoluments are factored in, the emoluments for members of the judicial branch of government, Madam Speaker, would be the Chief Justice at the total emoluments, $31.2 million for April 1st, 2022, and $34.8 million for April 1st, 2023. All the way down, Madam Speaker, the President of the Court of Appeal, $28.9 million and $32.2 million, respectively. The Appeal Court Judge, $27 million and $28.7 million, respectively. And the Senior Punitive Judge, $24 million and $26.8 million for April 1st, 2022 and April 1st, 2023. And the Punitive Judge at $23 million and $25.7 million for 2022 and 2023, respectively. Madam Speaker, at the level of local government, similar principles apply. Currently, compensation for the Mayor of Kingston and St. Andrew is set at 3% above the minimum salary scale of the Chief Executive Officer of the Kingston and St. Andrew municipality. The other positions in local government, Madam Speaker, are related to that of the Mayor of Kingston and St. Andrew. And currently, those benchmarks are the Mayor of Kingston at 3% more than the CEO of the Kingston and St. Andrew Corporation, the Mayor of Montego Bay at 91% of the Mayor of the KSA region, the Mayor of other parish capitals at 86% of the KSA Mayor, the Mayor of Portmore at 86% of the KSA Mayor, the Deputy Mayor of the KSA at 61% of the KSA Mayor, and the Deputy Mayor of Montego Bay, 55% of the Mayor of KSA, the Deputy Mayor of other parishes, 52% of the Mayor of KSA, and Deputy Mayor of Portmore at 52% of the KSA Mayor, and councillors at 44% of the Mayor of the KSA. In keeping with the goal of simplicity, Madam Speaker, the relationship between the pay of the Mayor of the Kingston and St. Andrew municipality and that of the CEO of the Kingston and St. Andrew municipality will be established at $52 above the minimum of the scale of that CEO, instead of the percentage relationship that I just described at 3%. And, Madam Speaker, from the deputy mayor to councillor, the percentage benchmarks are being adjusted, Madam Speaker. From, in the case of the, it went from sort of 86% at the mayor of Portmore and the mayor of parish capitals down to 61% of the deputy mayor. And it would just been adjusted upward, Madam Speaker, instead of 61% for the deputy mayor to 75%, and instead of 55% for the deputy mayor of Montego Bay to 70%, and from 52% for the deputy mayor for other parishes to 65%, and for councillors, instead of being at 44% of the mayor of KSA, to be at 50% of the mayor of the Kingston and St. Andrew municipality. Madam Speaker, this framework implies the following salaries for members of the political directorate who serve at the local level. For the mayor of Kingston, Madam Speaker, who is currently on a salary of $3.8 million, that will move, Madam Speaker, effective April 1st, 2022 to $8.9 million, for April 1st, 2023 to $10.1 million, and for April 1st, 2024 to $11.4 million. For the mayor of Montego Bay, the salary of $3.4 million will move to $8.1 million for 2022, $9.2 million for 2023, and $10.4 million for April 1st, 2024. The mayors for other parish capitals who are currently on $3.3 million, Madam Speaker, will move to $7.7 million, $8.7 million, and $9.9 million for April 1st, 2022, April 1st, 2023, and April 1st, 2024, respectively. And that will also be the salary for the mayor of Portmore. For the deputy mayor of Kingston, Madam Speaker, who is a salary of $2.3 million, that will move to $6.7 million, $7.6 million, and $8.6 million for April 1st, 2023, for April 1st, 2022, 2023, and 2024. Madam Speaker, for the deputy mayor of Montego Bay, who is on a salary of $2 million, that will move to $6.2 million, $7 million, and $8 million for April 1st, 2022, 2023, and 2024. And for the deputy mayors of other parish capitals who currently earn $1.99 million, Madam Speaker, that will move to $5.8 million, $6.6 million, and $7.4 million for the years April 1st, 2022, April 1st, 2023, and April 1st, 2024, respectively. And for the parish council, Madam Speaker, who currently, effective April 1st, 2021, was on a salary of $1.67 million, Madam Speaker, which I think everyone in this House would absolutely agree is woefully inadequate for the job that they do, Madam Speaker. That has been moved to $4.5 million effective April 1st, 2022 by virtue of the benchmark, $5 million for April 1st, 2023, and $5.7 million for April 1st, 2024. Now, Madam Speaker, these are consequent upon the movement in the compensation for the CEO of the Kingston and St. Andrew Corporation, who was moved from a salary level of approximately $4 million to a salary range of $8.9 million April 1st, 2022, $10 million April 1st, 2023, and $11.4 million 2024. Madam Speaker, as with members of the political directorate, previous allowances enjoyed by members of the political directorate, the non-reimbursable allowances, i.e. telephone allowance and those other fixed allowances, the reimbursable ones continue, those, Madam Speaker, will be discontinued. Now, Madam Speaker, these salary adjustments for the political directorate at the local and national levels across the 3 years of implementation, this is not for 1 year, we're talking the 3 years, for 2022-23, for 2023-24, and for 24-25 will cost a total of $1.7 billion over the 3-year period. Madam Speaker, after a tumultuous macroeconomic period lasting several decades, and after fiscal reform over the past decade, we have sought to establish a simplified, transparent, and market-informed public sector compensation system that can allow us to attract and retain the talent we need to run the public bureaucracy. The salaries announced here today for members of the executive and legislature form part of that effort. We have continued to align salaries for these critically important functions with corresponding benchmarks in the administrative public sector, as has been the case over at least 50 years, Madam Speaker, and this alignment will result in significant changes. Madam Speaker, it was bold of the government to undertake this public sector compensation reform in one go across all arms of government, and it is also bold to implement these changes that I've announced today at this time. Madam Speaker, we believe these changes to be in the best long-term interest of Jamaica. It is not about who occupies these positions today. It is about the quality that Jamaica will be able to attract and retain in positions of political leadership at all levels, tomorrow and beyond. This compensation restructure, Madam Speaker, is an investment in our future. We hope that Madam Speaker, that more qualified and experienced Jamaicans will find it attractive and financially feasible to offer themselves to serve their country through the administrative public service or through the political directorate. In this way, Madam Speaker, Jamaica is leading the Caribbean. There's no other Caribbean country that's implemented a public sector restructuring of the kind that we have, that has moved compensation levels in the way that we have, that has sought to remunerate the leadership in the public service across all branches, including the political directorate, in the way that we have. But then again, Madam Speaker, we also stand alone, or not stand alone, but we stand, Madam Speaker, with a few who have implemented the kinds of fiscal reforms that we have over as long a period. Madam Speaker, when we invest in our future in this way, in a manner that seeks to attract experienced and qualified persons to enter public service leadership in the administrative, professional, and political branches, Jamaica wins. And that is what this reform is about, Jamaica winning. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Madam Speaker, the opposition takes no issue with what the minister has announced. We would urge the government to deal with the anomalies that exist for civil servants who have been granted increases and where there are discrepancies in their salaries, to urgently address those anomalies so that everyone can benefit from the new compensation package. But we take no issue. I would ask one question. In relation to retired parliamentarians who are pensioners, is there any indexation between their pension and these new salary levels?
So, Madam Speaker, I will take the member's contribution as a statement of support for these reforms by the opposition, which I am grateful for. With respect to the point on addressing anomalies, Madam Speaker, this House and the country at large can rest assured that the Ministry of Finance and Public Service and the Transformation Implementation Unit are working overtime to address any anomalies that arise. The anomaly to the individual is it's as if the world is coming down because it's their particular experience. We can't afford to look at it from the point of view of 100,000. For that individual, that is all that matters in the world. And as a result, Madam Speaker, we take each and every one of the cases brought before us absolutely seriously. We would just want there to be an understanding that we have taken on the entire public service at one time. And there's no precedent that we have been able to find of a country that has done that. We have chosen to do it, Madam Speaker, because of the realities in our country. That if we had started the reform with one group and then proposed to do another group in a couple of years and another group in a couple of years, Madam Speaker, it would not be credible because we have tried that in the past. In the past, we started with one group that brought them to 80% of market. And all know the other groups were not adjusted. Which is why, Madam Speaker, this was the only way for Jamaica to do it, to take on the entire thing at once. But the corollary of it, Madam Speaker, is that in taking on the entire thing at once, while for 80% or more of persons, I would say, a higher number, maybe even 90%, things are working, there are no doubt anomalies that we have to address, and we give our commitment to do so. And may I use the opportunity, Madam Speaker, to also spell out, and it's necessary to do it so we can solve the issues. Madam Speaker, they say if you want to understand where you need reform in the body, right, you put a dye through, and you can see where the blockages are using a machine that can detect blockages. Similarly, Madam Speaker, if you want to understand the administrative challenges in the public service, you put in a new compensation system and you push it through. The Ministry of Finance is responsible for the pay policy and for reaching agreement with public sector unions and for providing the resources for the salaries to be paid. But salaries in the public service, Madam Speaker, the administration is very fragmented. They're implemented at a local level, and each ministry, department, and agency is responsible for their own implementation. For example, it is Parliament that will implement the new salaries for members of the executive and the legislature, not the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. Similarly, each ministry and department and agency implements their segment of it, not the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. For the vast majority of the public service, we have had that implementation go through without issue. You'll recall in December we had some issues in the health sector, but those delays were 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. And Madam Speaker, we have seen something like that in the education sector, Madam Speaker, which reflects, as the Minister will tell you, the reforms that we're going to need to implement in the administration of, I dare say, I have to say it, the administration of education, not teachers, but the administration of education, including the financial administration, Madam Speaker. This is clear for everyone to see. We implemented a complex reform across many ministries, departments, and agencies. We didn't have any hitches in the police. Didn't have any hitches in the civil service. The hitch in the health sector was just a few days, etc., etc. But when it comes to the education sector, the government of Jamaica, and can't escape responsibility because it's one government, the government of Jamaica has had these challenges. And the challenges don't arise, Madam Speaker, with the Ministry of Finance. And we have to be able to locate the problem in order to resolve it, locate the blockage in order to sort it out. The problems have arisen, Madam Speaker, in the calculations and administrations done at the local level, and it speaks to the reform that we need to have the courage to undertake in the administration. Now, none of this is any comfort to those on the receiving end, the teachers for whom they have not, they took a long time. It's not comfort for them. And we empathize with them from the bottom of my heart. But if we are about reform and if we're about making things better, we have to diagnose the problem properly. And convenient diagnoses, Madam Speaker, are not helpful, because if you knock at the wrong place where the problem may be, it's not going to solve it. We have to identify the problem, diagnose it, and then go about solving it. And the job that this government has, we're not going to shy away from it, and the Minister is here, is that the administrative reforms that are necessary in the education sector, in particular the financial administration reforms, are paramount, and we have to make them. On another occasion, I will bring to this House even further data and evidence that shows the need to do so and the benefit that the country is likely to derive from doing so. Madam Speaker, the question was asked about former members of the House and whether they are indexed or will benefit from these changes. Madam Speaker, I understand where the question is coming from. And again, I sort of empathize with those who would have served over long periods of time at salary levels that we all know were inadequate. But, Madam Speaker, members of the political directorate would not have been alone in that experience. That would have been the common experience of members of the public service. As such, we could not adjust levels for retired members of Parliament, i.e. those who retired prior to April 1st, 2022. Remember, these salaries are effective April 1st, 2022 and April 1st, 2023. For those who retired prior to April 1st, 2022, we could no more adjust their levels of financial flows than we could for members of the public service who retired 1st to April 1st, 2022. It's a reality, Madam Speaker, that breaks my heart. Breaks my heart, and I'm sure it does for everyone here. But those are our realities. We have to be principled, and our principles have to apply equally. And it would not be financially affordable to adjust for all retired members of the public service in the same way, Madam Speaker. Therefore, we can't for members of the House. But I may use the point, Madam Speaker, to make the argument that it behooves us in this House to continue, Madam Speaker, to observe prudent fiscal practices that abide by our fiscal rules, that give us the best chance to retain the real value of compensation. Our target range of inflation, once we get over this hump, is 4 to 6%, so that can be expected. But to avoid what we had in the past, which were long periods of inflation that exceeded those levels and indeed were extremely high, that is what is responsible for eroding the disposable income of retired members of the public service and of the political directorate. And we, at some point, will be retired too. And so, as we advocate, Madam Speaker, as we argue, let us resolve to do so within the envelope of what will keep Jamaica stable. Because we don't want to repeat what has happened in the past. We want that when the current public service members who may be young, when they eventually retire, decade, 2 decades, 3 decades from now, that, Madam Speaker, they can benefit from stability that preserves income over a long period of time. Let the pain that we feel for former colleagues and for retired members of the public service, Madam Speaker, may it push us, Madam Speaker, urge us to action, and that action being to be responsible in our policy agitation, in our debate and our argument. And by responsible, I mean fiscally responsible. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the member for his contribution. And with that, Madam Speaker, if that's the only question, I thank you for the opportunity to make the statement.
House Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, it's not contemplated for us to do any further business today. I therefore ask that the House adjourns until tomorrow, Wednesday, May 17, 2023 at 2 p.m. And just to indicate, Madam Speaker, that our sectoral debate continues tomorrow, and the Honorable Havel Williams, Minister of Education and Youth, and Member of Parliament for St. Andrew Eastern will make her presentation.
Members, the question before the House is that the House do adjourn until tomorrow, the 17th of May, when the Minister of Education will make her contribution to the sectoral debate. The sitting of Parliament will begin promptly at 2 p.m. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. This House is now adjourned.